Hey, it's the Redeye stream number 125. Trudeau, tariffs, and the War of 1812. Since when does anybody give a fuck about that little war? I mean, the one time the Canadians actually stood a chance, and it was forever ago, and nobody fucking cares. But of course, the President of the United States makes a joke to another world leader, and Twitter is in an uproar. So, all right, this is really about the aluminum and steel tariffs, right, MC?
Yes, and of course the threat for trade wars that have been looming for a while with people. In fact, there are several issues. I shouldn't say issues, but news articles today concerning tariffs and what's going to happen. Not the least of which is EU is supposedly ramping up to get in a tit for tat trade war. Go for it. You know, and I said this before. Go for it, EU. Go for it. If you think you're big and bad, go for it. You want to puff your chest out and sit up there and talk trash. The United States doesn't need you. All right, we didn't need you with the Iran deal. You saw what the Iran deal was worth. Basically,
yeah.
The
I want to touch on Iran. I want to touch on Iran here in a little bit because they opened up a new centrifuge today or yesterday.
There are several things that happened today if you've been watching the news. With that, we'll discuss it. I'll hold off on it until then. But if the EU wants to get into a trade war with the United States and thinks that somehow that the United States needs them, they're going to find out very quickly that they're sadly mistaken. They've been engaging in protectionist policies for a frickin' long ass time now, and quite frankly, we've over tolerated it, and we no longer have to do it.
Yeah, but MC, if you're looking at Canada, why are we ramping up tariffs on our neighbor from the north? I mean,
because the terrorists they hammered us with.
Yeah, but I mean, aren't we taking a totally it's a shift in United States policy, because they were talking about during the Obama years they wanted to connect the highway all the way from Canada to fucking Mexico City, right? And they wanted to have this new economic partnership within the Americas. Why is that a bad idea?
It's not, as long as there's actual free trade involved, which there isn't. Basically what they were doing was they were able to use the United States as a dumping ground for all of their products that they wanted to sell, but at the same time prevent any American products from going up north. From a competitive standpoint, they want their cake and eat it too. All right, and that's a lot of administrations have been allowing that to happen without all that much in the way of pushback. Every now and then there's a small pushback, but not real. Now you're going to be in a real trade war. Now the bills are going to come due. Okay, a lot of their commitments. How big is their standing Navy right now?
I have no idea, but I would imagine, not even an eighth of the size of ours.
I think they have 2 ships.
And they're probably whalers. No, I'm kidding.
Right. Well, I think they're icebreakers, to be honest. So they do serve a purpose, but I think they've only got two ships basically on active service right now. All right, so you have commitments around the world, but it seems like the only commitments that you're willing to make are those that the United States has to cover for. Okay, so no, the free ride is basically over, is what's being announced, and people don't like it. They're going to have to start paying for their own defense. They're going to have to start paying their own way. And when it comes to these trade deals, which were in many ways very favorable, all right, to Canada and several of these other groups, those trade deals are now suspect. If you're not going to open your markets, all right, to the United States, you're not going to get favorable treatment. That's what they're being told. That's happening that's what the Mexicans are being told. That's what the freaking Canadians are being told. All right, you're not going to get a free ride.
What about the pipeline? Trump was, he was really pushing to get that pipeline that Obama stopped actually pushed through. Okay. Are we going to continue to work with Canada when it comes to energy resources? Or, I mean, this trade war could ramp up rather fast, if you ask me.
It could. All right. But the losing end is not on the United States. Okay, let me explain to you what's going on. The biggest problem about producing, especially things like steel and aluminum in the United States, is not because we don't have a lot of aluminum or steel in the United States. We've got a lot of iron. We've got a lot of iron ore, all right? Tremendous amounts of it. Same thing with aluminum. We've got lots of bauxite in the United States. Okay, so why does it have to be produced in Canada? Well, the reason it was being produced in Canada was because of the regulations that were in the United States. Now, one of the things that Trump went in there is he went hacking and slashing on a lot of these ridiculous freaking regulations. We were over-regulating these industries to prevent them from building. As an added inducement, however, is temporarily there's going to be higher prices. Yes, temporarily that'll happen, but not for very long before the prices come down. What you have to do now is you have to encourage a lot of our older industries that have gone away to ramp back up, and that's what's happening. But the cost of ramping back up with new technology and so forth, all right, there's an initial startup cost. Basically, that's what's being paid for. The price of steel and so forth may rise temporarily, but overall it'll go back down again. Then it's Canada, then Mexico, and all these other places are going to even be in worse shape, because then we will absolutely not have to need them for anything. They won't be able to produce steel as cheap as we will. They won't be able to produce aluminum as cheaply as we will. All right. So what are you going to do then? If Canada and the rest of these people think that this is all we have to do is raise the prices a little bit on the American consumer, and therefore they'll fold like a house of cards, they're sadly mistaken. All right. One of the biggest tariffs one of the biggest things that we produce and outproduce the world in is food. And that's one of the most heavily tariffed areas, both from Canada, that we get from China. All right. They don't want our foodstuffs. Well, now basically they're saying, okay, well, we want free trade. That includes food. Okay. Open up these areas. If you really don't want to open it up, fine. Then we'll have a trade war. We'll see who wins. We have the markets, though. You have to sell your food somewhere. If you don't want to sell it to us, fine. Go to Latin America and sell it. Good luck.
Well, Venezuela can't pay for it, but they sure as hell need it. But, I mean, when you're looking at American industry, it has risen back up underneath Trump, and much more so than even during the Bush years. We were actually energy independent for the first time in, 30 years? Okay. I mean, that's a big deal. So we are on more solid footing now to have a trade war if need be. But the thing is, if you're going to raise tariffs and you're going to raise the price of everything that we're consuming on a daily basis, then I want the income tax abolished. You can have your tariff. I want my income tax gone.
Well, that's only if people are actually trying to pay the tariff. They're not going to. That's the problem.
But that's the way we used to fund our entire government, was purely on a tariff base, which is part of the reason why I disagree.
Back to the 1820s and the 1830s is not going to get us anywhere, Mad Dodge. That ship sailed a long time ago. And
it sailed in 1913, and it's a bunch of bullshit, and it's an unconstitutional act.
Well, you can say that it's unconstitutional all you want. The Supreme Court disagreed with you. Period.
What do they know? They're fucking assholes.
You have to live within the law. And that's what the law has said. So they make a lot of bad rulings. I've said this many times. There's a lot of bad rulings the Supreme Court does, but that's
so why did the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, get so offended when our president, Mr. Trump, decided to pull a little, War of 1812 joke, because, okay, so he said tariffs are, he's raising the tariffs for our national defense. And Trudeau's like, from what? We're not going to invade. And he's like, yeah, that's what you said when you, right before you burnt down our White House. That's
well, he got offended. He got offended before this. This was before when he made his little snide comment about, we're doing this for our own national defense. We're not a threat to you. Okay, you may not be a threat, but what is that as far as an initial threat to us? That might be true. But the reality is, would you become a threat? You've been trying to export communism to the United States for how freaking long? Screw you.
Well, and the one thing when you're talking about on the national defense side with the northern border, the northern border is hardly patrolled at all. And with all the refugees they have coming in, I do see it as a problem.
Well,
I do think we need a border defense.
It is a problem.
South.
And as far as I'm concerned, if they want to sit up there and preach to us about having refugees and everything else, personally, I would sit up there and take every freaking person we captured on the Mexican border and ship them right across our northern border. And here you go. Let's show you what a refugee crisis actually is, and just do it for 3 months. Let's see how long you last.
Well, they'll have some better food. Just saying. But
well, it's not just better food; it's that they won't be able to absorb the numbers that are coming across at all. 3 months,
well,
3 months worth. And I'm tired of being preached to them. I'm tired of them and their snide little commentary about Amnesty International says this and Amnesty International says that. Okay, well, let Amnesty International then take all of these people. Let Amnesty International sit up there and go, oh, you were killing civilians with drones. They were just civilians. Okay, well, then you better show me what terrorists look like, because they look an awful lot like civilians to me. They don't dress in uniform.
They don't look like 15-year-old little kids, sir.
Yes, they do. And that's where you're wrong. They do look like 15-year-olds. All right? They do put 15-year-olds on the front lines of those things. Where do you come back even making that comment? You might say that about a freaking 1 or 2-year-old, but they were putting bombs on 5-year-olds. 5.
Well, okay, I understand. But, okay, there is a thing called blowback. It does exist when you constantly...
These are blowback from what? We're going to anger these people that are willing to put bombs on 5-year-olds. And you're worried about blowback? Your priorities are screwed.
I'm worried about creating the terrorists. You know, by trying to solve the problem, we're creating more
bombs on what? What more are they going to do? Put more bombs on 5-year-olds? These are not people who think like freaking normal people. They don't have a Western attitude toward life. And if you keep coming back with this, well, I'm worried about blowback. Worried about blowback? What? What are they going to do? Put a bomb on a 5-year-old? They're already doing that.
Are we talking Islam, just so that I'm caught up to speed?
We're talking in general the Islamic jihadists. Yes.
It's kind of amazing that you can say strap a bomb on a kid, and I kind of know what we're talking about already. Just throwing that out there.
So what does that tell you, Mad Dodge? Think I'm still wrong and looking at this the wrong way?
I believe that the American foreign policy that it has held for the last 30 to 40 years is flawed. Yes, I do think it is flawed.
Oh, you want perfection? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I believe we are creating a lot of the problems that we're seeing ourselves by foreign intervention in areas that don't pertain to us. There's no defense.
You have a myopic view. You have yes, I do have a defense for Iraq, and you guys never want to listen to it. You come back with the same bullshit that you always do, because you know what? If it doesn't fit your narrative, it doesn't exist.
Bigfoot's real. No.
And Bigfoot is blurry. Bigfoot is blurry. That makes him extra scary.
I'm just saying, the intervention that we did, what good did it really do to the country of Iraq? And it
would have done wonderful for the country of Iraq if you would have let us finish the freaking job instead of bitching every day. Where's the weapons of mass destruction? That was all a lie. You just got us involved in a war for no reason, and instead of letting us finish the freaking war.
Fair enough. All right.
So wait, we shouldn't bitch about
Trudeau's fault.
We started to us.
Yeah.
You think it was bullshit? You know for a fact that all the other intelligence agencies in the world that said the same thing were putting it out there, but somehow the U.S. intelligence agency, they all knew that it was a lie and that the American people were being lied to, right?
It's entirely possible to create a story, yeah.
Yeah, how it's entirely possible to create a story, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about you have evidence, all right, that we knew that it was all bullshit, right?
At least that's what we were told.
Who's telling you that?
Well, at the time, that was every news outlet with the exception of Fox News.
Was telling you what?
That ultimately there was no evidence.
Oh, yeah.
Or the evidence that they had was shady.
that that the evidence that they had. But it's funny how every single intel agency around the world was saying the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's funny how
no, I agree. But if you're running into a conspiracy theory with the idea that everybody's saying the same thing to I don't know,
people who were saying it wanted to harm the president and harm the nation as a whole.
Do you have evidence of such a claim?
Oh yes, you can take a look right now. Take a look at it. Take a look at the bias in the media. The media bias were the ones that were driving this story. How many times, for example, were there any weapons of mass destruction found?
Not that I was aware of, no.
Yeah. So the troops that we have that are suffering from freaking chemical weapons, specifically, all right, from mustard gas, they don't exist apparently.
Well, no, that's not a mass. No, that's not a weapon of mass destruction.
It is a weapon of mass destruction.
Not based upon the definition that he was talking about something that can actually cause citywide damage, which did not exist.
Citywide damage can be done with chemical weapons.
Well, then it's a pretty much any weapon. Then, if you're going to run with his explanation was any weapon that can be attributed, then we all have weapons of mass destruction. Then yeah, I guess it was a good reason, but it's still a bullshit reason because we're just as guilty of it.
So what is that? That's not guilty. Hey, when was the last time we used them on civilians that had no freaking military around?
Well, I don't know, because apparently I can't trust the media anymore. So who the fuck knows?
Show me where it happened. Then you're right. We can't trust the media to a large extent. You've got to sit up there and open up your mind to taking a look at it with a jaundiced viewpoint. All right, but that doesn't mean
I get that. But here's the thing about here's the thing: we run into what is known as a conspiracy theory loop, where eventually we're running on strictly speculation because none of us know. And if your argument is based on the fact that none of us know,
show me. You say that my comments come back with, okay, show me the evidence, and so I can evaluate it. You haven't seen any evidence to the contrary. What you hear is people making comments and then running with it because it fits their narrative. We all know that there were chemical
you haven't
weapons.
Presented any evidence of weapons of mass destruction that we're not also that we're not also guilty of ourselves.
No, I don't have to show you that we're not guilty of it yourselves. You're trying to say, well, we're guilty of it. No, we're not. Because you haven't even shown me any evidence. You are making that accusation
with somebody over X thing that you yourself are doing.
Because hold on, the reason was this. What did the UN articles say? There were 19 freaking UN articles that were listed, and they were being violated repeatedly, including the one that they were supposed to have already destroyed all. Notice the word, all of their chemical weapons.
So that's on us then. So that's our responsibility.
No, that's the UN. That's the auspices that we went under. Okay. How long were we going to sit up there and tolerate them shooting at our planes and everything else that was going on?
Why are you flying over their fucking country?
Because like it or not, that's the world we live in.
So what if Iraq should be allowed to fly over our country?
This was the world. No, all right, you can't play a tit for tat freaking game.
That's what is known as fairness.
We're not talking fairness. The world's not fair. I don't know if you ever woke up to that.
No, I didn't say the world is not fair.
No, you just demanded fairness.
Just because you're yelling at me doesn't make you fucking right. The top of your voice doesn't improve your point. Ultimately, if you're going to run with the justification that we're going to be the police of the world that need to deal with things like this, we have to be held to the higher standard that we're holding everyone else to.
Wrong answer. Because we haven't used those.
Explain to me why it's a wrong answer.
Because the world. When was Iraq asked to be the policeman of the world?
Never.
All right. Were we? Yes, we were. The only time that we're not asked to be the policeman of the world is when somebody wants to bash the United States.
Who asked us?
The UN did.
When? Show me where they said, hey, by the way, we need you to go and enforce all of these policies that we have agreed on that you may not have agreed on, that may not be up to your constitution, but we want you to go and do the police.
Hold on. Where there was their UN resolutions in 1992 that said we need to sit up there and remove Saddam Hussein from Kuwait.
Did we agree to it?
It doesn't matter if we agreed to it or not. Were there UN resolutions? When you say the U.S. wasn't asked, you are freaking turning a blind eye to what was going on in the world stage.
Again, where is it our responsibility? How are we the UN?
I wasn't asking about that. This came from the UN. If you're going to go by the UN as to who the world's responsibility
you
is,
by the UN, not me. I'm asking why the U.S.
Exactly.
The police, and why should we agree to any of their terms, any of their things, or any of their resolutions?
Whether we agreed with the resolutions or not, we did agree to them. We did agree to those UN resolutions. We did vote on them. We did sit up there and have congressional freaking resolutions that were passed in Congress.
Okay.
Okay. We have a question from the chat. Where did Iraq get said weapons from?
It doesn't matter where they got them from.
Oh, it does.
No,
well, what if they got them from us?
What
if they got them from us? What if our wonderful CIA, because we're just going to go ahead and run it on speculation, which if you want to run with CIA not being something that would do this, you're fucking naive. What if they sold them the weapons of mass destruction? Now we started a war over something they sold to them.
What difference does it make? All right, why? Or who sold what where? Because if you're going to go by that, then what you're going to say is everyone's the same, blah, 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 blah. Just let people get massacred.
Yeah, just let people get massacred. Because ultimately, if they're going to have a war of fucking ideology in which they're going to massacre each other anyway,
and while you stand around watching massacre after massacre take place, getting closer and closer to your shores and your border, who are you going to blame then?
Probably ourselves for selling them the illegal weapons under this particular premise.
How about ourselves not freaking illegal when we could have?
Well, no, it goes back to the original premise. If we weren't selling them the weapons under this,
the idea that first of all, the idea that the United States sold them all these weapons and that they didn't have freaking manufacturing facilities is a bunch of crap.
Oh, I love that on one hand you can say that because something's is being pushed by the media, that something can't be covered up by the media at the same time.
I didn't say that the media. No. The media covers up things. Hold on. The media has an agenda, and that agenda it comes up first. And their first and foremost thing on their agenda is a political one. They make
who is in charge of the agenda though? Who would be benefiting from an agenda like this?
The Democrats and the frickin' mainstream media, specifically the ones that have had the longest time been the ones that controlled that narrative. And it started with one specific group, believe it or not, and that is the New York Times. The New York Times was called the paper of record, and there was a reason for it, because everything came from them. Everything
just so you know, MC, I really like you. You're an impressive fucking debater. That, granted, you do yell at me on occasion, but that shit don't work.
I shouldn't yell. You are correct. I apologize for that.
MC, here's the thing. All right, let's fast forward to more current events. Does the United States have state sovereignty? Are we our own country? The answer is yes. Well, why is the answer no for, I don't know, Pakistan, where we're doing drone bombings all the fucking time? I mean, this is what they're talking about when they're talking about blowback and killing civilians.
No, but see, that's nonsense.
Sovereign state and bombing their territory.
First of all,
war.
We have declared war. We declared war against the terrorists. You just don't like the fact of how we did it.
That's just an imaginary fucking war.
We declared war against
not imaginary when you're sending people out there to do this.
Or a fucking object, as opposed to I don't know, something you can actually declare war on, which is a person, a nation, or
it's a limited conflict. People want to play this little game of let's do things just peace, and we'll all do it nice and simple. The world won't do it this way.
Be fucking honest about it. That's all. You can't war against terrorism, because ultimately terrorism is used even by us in the form of propaganda.
No, terrorism isn't propaganda, dude.
Yes, it is. It is a tool of, if it's creating fear in people to control what they do, that is textbook definition of terrorism. It's not using a bomb.
Terrorism is not propaganda. Propaganda can be used by terrorists. They can be used by our enemies. It can be used by us as well. But that's not the same. That does not equivocate.
Explaining that
that does not equivocate to terrorism.
Anything to push a narrative, and that includes using fear to make you do what you want. And if you fear speaking out because you're going to be labeled a Nazi, or you're going to be labeled an Islamophobe, or anything else that is putting fear into the population to make them do what you want, that is textbook terrorism.
Okay, and who's conducting terrorism then?
That would be the media and whoever is in charge of the agenda. So ultimately, if we're going to war on terrorism, I think we should at least start at home so that we're starting from a fucking good standing point.
Play it when you have that it's not a war? If you're going to say war on terrorism, then you've got to sit up there and deal with the propaganda as it is.
War on terrorism.
Right? You've got to sit up there.
If you want to go a war on an idea, that's fine, but be honest about it. We're warring against Islam because that's ultimately the problem here.
I don't disagree. We're not warring against Islam as much as from a religious standpoint. We're against the 12th century culture that exists within that. Yes, I do agree with you. I can't argue that point.
Well, that seems to be a bit of a splitting hairs issue here, ultimately, because anybody tries, just let me finish really quick, and I'll let you go. Anybody that tries to separate what Islam is ends up getting targeted by the most dangerous aspect of Islam. So
I agree.
There is no way to, at least not yet. I don't know. I'll never say never because nothing's set in stone. But at the present moment, you're going to have to broaden your scope, because by constantly splitting hairs about who is the radical, who is the moderate, who is the whatever, you're going to create this thing that we can't ever find it. It becomes a whack-a-mole, because ultimately the religion looks at it as one. One attack on Islam is an attack on all of Islam.
I understand your point of view, but we're not. That's why there's a differentiation between what we're attacking. We are at war with a 12th century mentality and a 12th century culture, and it is very difficult at this point in time to see that there's going to be a difference between the quote unquote religion versus the 12th century ideology that we are at war with. But now, and I've always agreed with that. I've always agreed to say, hey, we've got to get people to understand we're at war with the culture that exists there. And that culture has to be forced to change, because if you don't force it to change with modern weaponry, it's going down the same road that Nazi Germany did, and it's going down the same road that frickin' Japan did prior to World War II. It's the same problem.
I think
culture.
Go ahead, Mad Dodge. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I'm just wondering why can't you just isolate it off then, especially since now we were just talking about how we're energy independent. We no longer need their fucking oil.
How can we
isolate the sons of bitches and let them die themselves?
How can we isolate them?
If they are
isolate them, you've got to build a freaking wall around them. Don't let them out. Now, how are you going to do that? Especially if you can't do it with some kind of physical means.
How did we do it with North Korea? We isolated them, and now they're coming to the table, and they want into the real world.
We have a freaking DMZ, a border around them. We sit up there and surround them with our navy. Make it so that they ultimately can't have a functioning economy, because so many nations have blocked them off.
So it's one of those things that, they ended up isolating themselves due to their own arrogance. The thing about Islam is different than North Korea is Islam's totally willing to apply and then disregard any of their own tenets.
That's not the only
infiltrate a population.
You are correct about that. I shouldn't have interrupted.
Oh, I'm sorry. All I was going to say was what makes them different than North Korea is that North Korea follows this regime idea because of the way their culture is established. It's all about the government and the family that runs it, and that has to do with their mythology dealing with the family bringing North Korea up out of the slums. Now, with Islam, it's about spreading that religion. North Korea couldn't give a shit about how much it's really spreading its own thing. It just wants to make sure it maintains control of its own area, at least at the present moment. Islam is about spreading far and wide like old religions did for the longest time. The only way to fight religion and not get rid of the religion is to fight it with another religion. And that's always been the case. That's where the Crusades came from. You had to have one religious ideology willing to die for their ideas, fighting the other religious ideology willing to die for their ideas. Otherwise, the only other way to do it would be to educate them, and they don't want to be.
Okay, but when you try to actually combat them, you get a situation like Israel, where they are constantly the bad guy no matter what, even though they need a fucking missile defense grid to even exist, or they would have been wiped off the fucking face of the earth already. So, I mean,
it's because of selective carrying over religion.
Fair enough. Okay. And no, MC, if you want to continue ranting, how's your blood pressure, buddy?
My blood pressure's fine. Why would you ask?
Because, dude, you were going off the hook there for a minute.
Yeah, because I wanted to rant for a while.
All right. Well, I wanted to give you somebody who could actually, you know, because
you're not wrong.
Dodge.
I would agree with you that we needed their idea of who we were fighting and what we were fighting is misjudged. Okay, and it was done, and it was put that way because people wanted to play with a PC culture game.
Exactly.
Right, and that is a problem, and I've never denied that. But then again, I'm not the one who said that we should be doing it this way. I want to go in there with B-52s and bomb them till they go, okay, we surrender.
Well, right now we're dealing and this was my point, is right now we have not figured out how to maintain ourselves yet, and we're trying to police the world. We're not capable of that. So we have to prioritize. So
I disagree with you intensely about that. The problem isn't that we don't know how. The problem is that we have people within our country that are preventing us from doing it because they want they want something clean. They want to do it gentle. They want a kinder, gentler world, and they think that somehow this is how it comes about. They're the same people that were railing on, we can't do it.
Unfortunately, you do know what the cure for that is, right? No. Do you know what the cure for that particular mentality is?
What's the cure in your mind?
Uncomfortable. The reason people get used to an uncomfortable world is because they experience an uncomfortable world. We are isolated by 2 oceans, and our biggest problem is Mexico. Canada's not really a problem, maybe with the exception of a cultural exchange. But our biggest problem in terms of like actual violence and stuff is actually either coming from within our own country, dealing with whatever insecurities going on there, or Mexico. That's our only major issue. We don't ever deal with what like Europeans have to deal with, where they have countries on all sides.
They have the same problem, and it's the same. There's the same. The reason
I'm just saying we have geographical isolation that has given us quite the ability to basically be comfortable since ultimately the Civil War. Even during like Vietnam War and Korean War, we never really felt, or even World War II. The only thing that ever ended up hitting us in World War II was Pearl Harbor. And the occasional balloon bomb that would float across.
I was going to say, yeah.
Tell that to all the ships that got snake off the coast.
Point is, I'm not. No, you're talking military. In terms of civilians, never experienced.
Those are civilian ships that were being.
But my point is, civilians on land, the bulk of the people that lived here for the last at least 100 years have had no major tragedy to have to really deal with maybe the exception of the Great Depression. Up until now, everybody's been really comfortable, especially this fucking generation. The youngest of this generation has had everything handed to them.
You are correct. You're correct to the point, but that's not where the problem is.
Yes, it is, because you're talking about people who are soft. And how you deal with soft people is you make them uncomfortable. Now, how does that happen? Typically, they end up making themselves uncomfortable. That's why you're starting to see for a major push for more authoritarian ideas, because they think it's a good idea. But ultimately, we all know what's going to happen. And when it happens, we're all going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to suck for a long time. Eventually, there will be a revolt, and we'll get back to the cycle again, because we go through a cycle. It goes back to that the Tree of Liberty needs to be refreshed with the blood of patriots on occasion.
The problem with thinking like that, the biggest problem with thinking like that is if you get to the point where the U.S. is uncomfortable, we're not dying just by 10s or 20s in the civilian world. You're dying in the literally millions. Because of the weapon systems that exist today, the amount of carnage and death isn't going to be limited to a small scale.
It can't be. No.
And so what you're looking at is, if you allow that to happen, then it's going to be mass destruction, mass chaos, mass everything. Right?
I'm not saying allow. What I'm saying is that it's inevitable. Historically speaking, it always happens.
Necessarily inevitable. The problem that we have, the reason that Europe's having the same issues, all right, is the same issue that we're having, and that's frickin' the idea of quote unquote progressivism. All right, the idea that somehow you can be a quote unquote a leftist and still get along with one another, that there's no problem with being a leftist. Now, I'm not saying that you sit up there and give these guys helicopter rides, as some people have suggested. All right, but the reality is that the biggest thing that weakens the United States, that weakens us, has more to do with their political ideology. All right, of freaking communism and Marxism than almost anything else and any other single thing.
Well, that's one thing where I agree with you. No. I'll agree with you on that one, because ultimately, here's the thing: I don't want a single party system. That doesn't work either. But the problem is, and it's human nature to do this. is they've taken their position too far to one direction, which has forced the right in a lot of areas, which, you know, when you're dealing with your neo-Nazis, your actual alt-right people have had to push their right ideology all the way far right to compete for what is essentially attention.
No,
and so what we now have what we now have is we have two fringe elements that are behaving like they are the majority, and one is doing it better because they have more influence in the media than the other one does.
No, they've always had that influence in the media. The difference is now is you're finally seeing pushback on the other way. The reason you're seeing pushback is because the media has lost the narrative.
Well, right? I think that also has. Well, I think that has to do with burnout as well. You got to realize people.
No, because it's been going on for decades.
Well, that's my point. That's my point. Which is people build up a tolerance to things, and that includes bullshit. We've known bullshit's been around for a long time. It's been a kind of a joke that politicians always lie, and you know we all know this. And I think we're getting to the point as a population, thanks to Twitter being able to circulate so much so quickly. We find even if it's like nasty honesty refreshing.
Well, to an extent, yeah, but it's because the honesty couldn't exist before for the past decade or so.
But I'm just saying that I think that's why you're seeing
about the past 50 years, and that's the difference. All right, it's because the rise of mass media. All right, it began with radio. Now, radio was an interesting medium because, like paper, all right, when you had to read something, it wasn't a medium that necessarily just immediately attached itself to emotion. All right, because you had to engage your imagination. You had to engage thinking processes when you were thinking about it on the radio. But radio rapidly gave way to television. Television is almost exclusively, all right, an emotion-driven medium. All right, you don't have to frickin'. You can just sit in front of the boob tube. You laugh because people are visual creatures, but you won't even remember half the time what was actually said, especially if it's in a non-thinking context. All right.
You haven't met very many Trekkies. Just
no, I've met a lot of Trekkies. All right, but trust me, that's where they came back with this view that Star Trek was, or that Starfleet was never a military, because they were it was an emotional based context, not a frickin' thought one.
Well, to be fair, Gene Roddenberry always kind of had that type of perspective, just like you see a lot of anti-religious elements within the whole Star Trek thing.
But he had
elements, or just
But that's the next generation. That wasn't that wasn't the original series, and that's another difference. When you say Star Trek, the first thing I think of is the original series, not the next generation, because I've always considered the next generation a piece of trash. To be honest, I've never liked the next generation.
I think Deep Space Nine was probably the best Star Trek show out of them all. But anyway, we've digressed so far away from the original topic, which is fine. I don't see how so many people can argue the United States needs to secure its borders. We're a sovereign country and blah, 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 while we're bombing other sovereign nations on a daily basis with no declaration of war.
We had a declaration of war. You keep coming back again and again, and
because you have to declare war against another country.
I hate to tell you this, but whether you like it or not, legally, understand this.
Ideology.
You can win a war against the ideology. When you're talking about what we're dealing with now, the fact is that people don't want to sit up there and face what we're dealing with. Okay. Yes, this is a type of insurgency. Yes, this is a guerrilla type of movement. Have we won guerrilla wars before? Has the United States engaged against guerrilla campaigns in the past? Have they beaten them? Yes, we have. What's it take? It takes something that most people find totally unpalatable today. But for you to say that we don't have a legal basis, especially when you talk about, well, we didn't declare war, ignores the fact that this has been adjudicated in the Supreme Court. You keep denying the fact that the Supreme Court is the final arbiter of what is freaking legal and what isn't. What is freaking constitutional and what isn't. Not you.
Okay, that's fair enough, but the fact remains we are bombing sovereign countries and not declaring war against them.
We didn't declare war against the people that they support.
Okay, so
are we trying to bomb Istanbul back into the Stone Age? No.
No, last I checked, they were a NATO ally, but you know that might be a fluid situation.
Pakistan is not a NATO ally.
No, I'm talking about Istanbul. That's in Turkey, isn't it?
I did say Istanbul. You are correct. I meant to say Islamabad. My mistake.
Okay, fair enough. I score 1 for me on a technicality. No, when you're actually fighting an ideology, though, and you're using that as an excuse to invade people's airspace, and then some people who are dying are not extremists. They're not. There are collateral damage.
You are going to get collateral damage. Welcome to war. War isn't pretty.
What if somebody was doing that over our own country?
Once again, you're conflating their freaking ideology with ours. If they had our view of the world, they wouldn't be putting bombs on 5-year-olds.
Is it easier to clean than an
Okay, but we're shooting them from orbit pretty much.
I don't care where we're shooting them from. We're shooting the very people who think it's okay, all right, to put bombs on 5-year-olds. And send them to somebody else's school with school children to blow them up. This is a perfectly acceptable ideological way of waging war in their minds. That's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with that culture. That's their culture.
So what's the end game? When does it ever end? If you have to destroy the entire ideology and the more people you kill, the more terrorists you create.
It ends when you finally get serious and you keep bombing them till they say, we surrender. That's going to be the ultimate outcome of this. And the longer you wait, the more bombing it's going to take.
Okay. I mean, if you look at so should we start droning areas of London?
What did I say?
You know,
did I say
I'm serious. So,
what it's going to take is mass bombing, going grid by grid with B-52s until
there's terrorists in England, and the English police aren't doing anything about it. Should we intervene there? What makes it okay to intervene in Pakistan and not London?
If we find out that they're exporting these guys and they refuse to do anything about it, then yeah, I have no problem with bombing frickin' London.
Okay, well, Trudeau seems to really support the refugees, which is obviously going to bring terrorists in with them. Should we declare war on Canada and take them out?
I think that we should ban. I think we should sit up there and close our borders completely down. Don't I?
For me,
okay, so how am I the isolationist here in this situation?
I said I said we should close our borders. I didn't say that we shouldn't frickin' engage with people.
Yeah, but by engagement you mean dropping bombs.
No, I mean engaging them however they want to be engaged. If their form of engagement is bombing, fine. Then I'm all for bombing them back and bombing them completely until they stop it. And I don't mean tit for tat. I mean frickin' massive bombings and end the war. You want us, but everybody keeps coming back going, oh, they're just innocent civilians. In fact, that's the commonality that keeps coming back again and again and again. And you're drawing an equivalency that doesn't exist. The problem we have is we're not at war with an ideology. We're at war with a culture. We're at war with a 12th century mentality. And that's the mentality you've got to beat. I don't worry about the specifics of Islam as much as the 12th century mentality that has wrapped itself around.
Okay, fair enough. So since we're already pretty much on the subject, let's go ahead and talk about Iran. What moves have they started making lately? I know I read they opened up a new reactor that could create weapons of mass destruction, actual atomic weapons, ones that we could find.
Yeah, there wasn't tons of freaking uranium that the weapons inspector had been kicked out of. There weren't centrifuges that we found in Iraq at all, right?
Okay. Well, we're moving on to Iran. They've also made more overtures, more threats to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. I believe that's the correct place. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
No, and if they shut that down, that's a lot of the oil exports that are going through there internationally, and the United States will act. That is a fact.
Okay, but why should we act? According to you, we should just let it happen, right?
According to me,
we're self-sufficient.
We are. We're energy independent now. Yeah.
So why should we act? Just let it happen, right?
Let the British Navy handle it. Would be my my response to that.
Let somebody else handle it, huh?
It's their turn. It's their turn.
It's their turn. No, they're not just doing that. What came out today was several different things. First of all, it was that surprise, the Obama administration was violating the law. They had gone out there and were breaking the sanctions. This is even before they came up with the ridiculous deal that they did. All right, where they were intentionally telling banks to violate the law so that they could get the Iranians money. All right, and get access to our banking system, which is what they're not supposed to have access to. Even now, they're not supposed to have access to it. But Obama basically worked a deal in the background that nobody knew about to cheat on that deal. The other problem with the Iranians is exactly the problem we have with our quote-unquote supposed allies in frickin' Europe, which is the allies have never given a shit about our sanctions. They constantly violate these sanction rules on a constant basis. And then it's up to the United States to sit up there and actually say, hey, you've got to stop it. We have proof. Because
so why does it matter to us if they don't? Here's the thing: let's use Trumpisms for a particular argument. If it's a bad deal, why are we still doing it?
Oh, we shouldn't. We shouldn't.
No. This isn't a question of shouldn't. There has to be a reason for why we're doing it. So you have
because we live in this is the world that we live in currently.
I think it's because resources.
Okay, what resources do we need from Iran?
Well, at the moment, because of the fact that let's go back to your Obama administration situation, which is he put a bunch of restrictions on our ability to, for environmental reasons, to mine our own resources, a lot of them. So ultimately, in order to get those resources that are still needed, we have to import them from somewhere. So either we change those or we maintain some kind of working relationship with the resources we need in the way of oil.
But we haven't needed that. We don't need it.
We don't? Why not?
Why do we need it? We got plenty
because we run on it.
We got plenty of oil in the United States. We don't need that.
But if we can't get to it,
we can get to it. Obviously,
not with the restrictions we have.
Who's putting those? Those are self-imposed restrictions.
Exactly.
So the first thing we had to do.
We have an option.
Hold on.
In order getting rid of the restrictions,
and we've done that. Things are now changing. Not all
now,
but because
in this administration, if the administration has power, it won't last.
Okay, well, welcome to the world we live in. We don't live in the world we want. We live in the world we exist in.
And I'm not arguing that. What I'm arguing is if they're over there policing it to maintain resources, it's essentially hedging your bets. They don't give a fuck about the progressive agenda from their end. Their interest is an economic one. So morals don't matter.
Whose interest? Or
the government's interest. In order to maintain a solid economy, we have to have energy resources.
The government's interest is never economic. The government's interest is not in economics in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
Where did you come back with that? It is not.
Yes, it is. If you look at government as a business, their job is to get as much money as possible, and they're doing fantastic because money disappears from the government all the time.
A business. All right.
Yes, they are.
The people in charge of the government, the people in the government don't give a rat's ass about the economy. They don't give a rat's ass about the nation. They care about their own frickin' power and their own frickin' status in life. All right. So you can't sit up there. So the only people who do care about that are the you and me, and supposedly, right, the representatives we choose to represent us in those cases. The problem is
interested in business.
The problem is that the bureaucracy has gotten too large to where we have that kind of an issue. All right, but that doesn't matter with the world that we live in currently. Okay,
if you look at power, as a commodity, then government is absolutely a business. They're just not dealing in the business you're talking about.
They're not a business because there's no competition.
Let me finish. Well, yes, there is. It's the constant change in population. So ultimately, what you're going to get in terms of your leaders has to be dealing with what your population is. The kind of leaders we're going to get are representatives, whether we like it or not, of our population. However, if if for some reason the government is this nebulous thing that has its own agenda that is never changing, regardless of the population who has constantly changing morals, values, and situations, then it has to be running from a platform that never changes, which is a business model.
No, it's business models change all the time. What are you talking about? In fact, it's the businesses that never change that get freaking destroyed.
A working business model does not. A working business model looks at the same thing every single time. It's commodity to get profit. And how do you manage getting that commodity to the people who will give you profit? And if the commodity is power, then your profit will also be in power. So ultimately, when the government's trading, it's trading in power.
Hold on. But that's only
of armies. So if you want control of resources to make your people happy,
hold on a second. That does. First of all, they don't have to keep the people happy necessarily.
Yes,
that isn't their goal. No, they in our republic. Generally, yes, you can say that from a generic standpoint, but you're going to tell me that the government
fake democracy, even in a fake democracy, which we are in, well, actually, we're in a democratic republic
right now. But you have a fake democracy in in Venezuela right now.
Exactly. And guess what? There are a lot of people who are still happy there because they're in the right position. Poor people, not so much.
The majority of the people aren't happy there.
But I'm just saying, when the poor people get to a point where they can't, it goes back to that uncomfortable thing I brought up before. They revolt and shit gets violent, and that's why government wants them to be what is known as a marginally acceptable level of happiness. Because as long as people I'm just saying, people are notorious for wanting to complain about things. So the government basically goes, okay, we can't get away from that. So what we need to do is we need to mitigate how much they complain so that ultimately they won't end up riling themselves up to a problem.
The problem that you're dealing with in a democracy like ours or a republic,
democratic republic,
is the fact that they're not interested in that as much as they are in acquisition of power. So,
which again, that's the business model.
All right, but that's just you can look at it from that standpoint that it's their business model because they want to gain power for themselves for self-aggrandizement. I can't pronounce that freaking word.
I'm just saying if you look at it from the structure of like a hierarchy on how we value things, which is, well, let's say at the bare bones, the bottom is your social issues, and that has to do with people's happiness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Next is your economic issues. This has to do with power, your ability to live, eat reasonable food, have good water, et cetera, et cetera. So the basic needs for human survival. The top is the power, and that controls all the bottom things. And in order to maintain that top level, if you're at that top level, you have to have control over one or preferably both. And right now, what you have is the Republicans trying to take control of the economic side, and you have the Democrats trying to take over the social side. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to shift the position to where social is more important than economic, and then the whole thing crumbles.
No. See, that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, and it doesn't fit with reality. All right, especially when you start talking about it doesn't because the focus. Hold on a second. Because the focus of the Democrats,
it always boils down to
man. And you're completely wrong, and here's why. All right, you sit up there and said that their agenda is on economics, right? If their agenda was on economics, then the Democrats would be focusing on increasing economic power, but they haven't been doing that, have they? In fact, what they've been doing is actually been impinging upon the economic power. They don't care about economic power. Their power.
And I agree with you. They don't.
All right. And so,
when the government interferes with the economy, they fuck it up every time. Just like the story I already had picked out for the next topic. I'll go ahead and lay it out real quick.
No, that isn't.
Okay, so the state of Oregon legalized marijuana, right? They wanted all the illegal growers to switch and become legal. So they issued as many fucking licenses as they possibly could. Well, guess what they have to do now? Here in 2 weeks, they are canceling all new licenses. They're not handing any more out. And they have to, next time they come into session, figure out what to do. Because they flooded the market with marijuana, and the price has crashed. Exactly. It's literally, it's like $30 for a freaking quarter ounce. So now the people with the businesses can't make their overhead. Everything the government touches, it fucks up. Even marijuana.
No, I'm curious. Is that a Republican push or was that a Democratic push?
It was the Democrats. They wanted to they wanted the black market to disappear, which it did. But now the prices are just so cheap.
Well, even though it is a simplistic point, and I agree with MC, but I think it still fits, because ultimately, when the leftists put all their focus on social issues, and that's all it is, and that's controlling information, and that's controlling how people think, and that is very important, because if you can control that, you can get a lot of things to go your way. In the case of the marijuana thing, that does both, because marijuana is a crop, marijuana can sell. However, there are a lot of people who are interested in having marijuana be legal. So ultimately, it's also a social issue, because a lot of people use it and enjoy it for all, whether that be a medical purpose or just because you like to party. The concept of it is they thought they had control over both and put more emphasis on the social part. And that had to do with getting your votes from your illegal people, which ended up flooding the market, because all of them thought about it as a business sense. Now that weed's legal, I can now grow weed in my backyard and sell it, and people will buy it. Because regardless of quality, you can probably get if somebody's getting stoned, you can find a buyer to get it if it's cheap enough. It still falls under that paradigm of economics and social. And what the Democrats are trying to do is they're trying to switch it to where the social is more important than economic, and that doesn't work, because the economic is the one that keeps everything else functioning. Because if you have no economy, if everybody's starving to death, like you mentioned in Venezuela, the whole social thing breaks down.
What are the goal of leftists? What were they freaking married around? What does their entire ideology? What is it married to?
You're married to a communist or socialist concept.
All right, so it's married to what? A communist philosophy. What was the communist philosophy? What is it? What's its underpinning?
Oh, workers of the world unite.
Well, no.
I was just
seizure. It's basically a seizure and command and control of all the economy.
Exactly.
This was no different than that. This is them seizing command and control. The fact that they're inept is absolutely immaterial to them, and it always has been.
But that's my point. Because ultimately, if you seize control of the economy from their viewpoint, you win. And that even continues into a capitalist viewpoint, because ultimately capitalism is just a really advanced tally system, keeping track of who's in the lead with more money. So ultimately, you could boil it down to capitalism is a zero-sum game. Whoever gets all the money.
A capitalism, you never get a point where in a capitalist society, you never get a point. In a capitalist society, you never get to a point where everyone has control of the money. And the reason for that is because what is important is individualized.
Exactly.
So you never...
That's exactly so. But here's the thing. The odds are so limited that would happen. That's what makes capitalism better. But it's still possible, because as we see today, it is. Because ultimately, if you can get control of a number of institutions that have a large number of influence, you end up gaining, you end up soaking up the bulk of the money that nobody could catch up. And
nobody cares. Not everybody. When people are competing for it, all right, you're always going to have areas where some people are going to get more than others, but not everybody's going to be competing for it in that way.
But to say that it can't happen, is naive.
It cannot happen, because if there's too much, if competition is that widespread, it's absolutely impossible to concentrate.
If you are in a position where you are in control of the bulk of the money in a capitalist situation, you can actually force in communism and get what you want in the end. Ultimately, the winner of capitalism in that particular viewpoint turns everything into communism. And my point is,
if that was the case,
the
United States would have been destroyed. All right, under the robber barons of the late 1800s and early 1900s, and that not only didn't happen, it couldn't happen, because the attempts that they tried to make at that time, all right, specifically with the kind of monopolies you were talking about, right, were absolutely destroyed. All right,
yeah, but you had harder citizens.
All right. Well,
we're talking pushovers here. These are people this is a terrible example, but I'm still going to use it because I still think it works. Look how many abuses that Google and YouTube have used against their users, and they bitch and moan and cry about it and do nothing.
Well, I mean, I can't argue that point. You're
so
right.
my point is, if you look at it from kind of just a historical attitude, the more comfortable people get, the more willing they're able to take slow stabs at their freedoms, especially for this illusion that never goes away, safety that cannot be given to anyone ever by anyone.
No, you have to be primarily responsible for your own safety. You're correct.
Period.
All right, that has to be the primary thing. But when you talk about, when you expand that down to the economy and how the economy actually runs, All right. With the fact is that in order for capitalism to work, you can't have freaking intervention by the government. In this case, in that one regard, Mad Dodge is 100% correct. The more you sit up there and involve government, then you don't have capitalism. The
But
more
I'm just saying that
intervention
the government looks at it as their job to, in some way, control the government so they can control
Hold on,
to control the economy so that they can maintain their power, because
they want to maintain their power and control the people.
This country comes from the people. At least in this country, assuming you're believing that it's not a rigged system, because there have been some really good arguments that it might be just a big show. Because I mean, look at the way we reacted to reality shows. You know, there were people who were like, "This is absolutely real."
There were people who were saying that about frickin' WWF back in the
I know that. I'm just saying people are fucking stupid. So
there's a lot of stupid people in the world. That's true. The problem is,
and if you look at our education system, it makes sense that the government would do anything in its power to essentially.
But who was it that wanted the government in control of this stuff? Who wanted the expansion of this? Who was it that always wanted to push that kind of an agenda?
Democrats, because that's because their interest is in social.
Whether they were Democrats or whether they were freaking wishy-washy Republicans, you know, at the times they're left.
Well, you also had to deal with your religious Republicans, and that kind of backfired on them. I look at it this way.
You see, you're looking at that aspect that you just specifically mentioned is ridiculous, and I'll tell you why. Because you're looking at that through the lens of today's media. All right. The media is the ones that sit up there and attack religion in this country more than anything else. And what they also did is they overinflated it to make it look like a threat to other people so they could seize more liberty. All right. They've done this for quite a while. All right. They way overblown this. And the people that were most responsible for it are the leftists in this country, especially the ones that come back and cry about the McCarthyism era and the blacklist in Hollywood.
I would agree that it was blown. No, I would agree that it's blown out of proportion. But I will admit that a number of my arguments with the right always seems to fall down to some kind of religious tie-in in some way. And
you can always tie religion. The great sop about that is the fact that you could tie anything into a religion. Everything becomes a religious aspect, and then it
all the way down to science, dude. Science to some people, science has become a religion. So I can totally agree with that.
No, everything you can religiousize everything. All right, it's been an old sap for frickin' forever. All right, you want to talk about science and say how science has been abused. All right, and what people pass for science nowadays? It isn't science.
Even atheism has been given some form of religionization in its own way.
It is a belief system. If you say that a religion is a consistent belief system, then you can't sit up there and say that atheism is not a belief system.
I don't know. I disagree. Atheism is a lack of belief system unless you turn your lack of belief into
lack of belief is belief.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
Because ultimately, if you tell me something and I don't believe you, that's not me believing something. That's me just saying no.
That's you that says this can't exist. XYZ. Period.
No, I don't believe what you said. I didn't say it didn't exist. I said I don't believe what you said.
Then you can't be an atheist. Because if you identify the fact that something could exist, then you're not an atheist. The atheists start with the fact God doesn't exist.
No. That's ultimately the religion of atheism. What I'm saying is that if you're an atheist, basically your position is I don't believe what you're saying until you prove me evidence in terms of the way religion works.
That is not the basis of atheism. I'm sorry, but that's not the basis.
Or is that the basis of agnosticism?
That's the basis of agnosticism. I'll agree.
All right, then I'm an agnostic. Then fine, fair enough. Because ultimately, it does boil down that when it comes to religion, there's no way to prove any of it. So that's just the way it goes. When it comes to how religious freedom works, and this is one of the reasons why I try not to.
There's a difference between agnostics and atheists. Right? Well, that's one thing you got to understand.
Okay, very good. Well, here's the thing. I had somebody convince me I was an atheist because ultimately I don't believe in God. It's or at least the way that we describe God, because it doesn't make any sense. It strikes me as entirely too arrogant for omnipotence. But the concept of freedom of religion is one of the reasons why I didn't get into the idea of joining up with atheists who are like, you're wrong about this. Is ultimately it's part of our Constitution. You're allowed to believe that. I'm allowed to not agree with you. That's part of the other thing is I have the right to free speech. It's one of the hangups a lot of people have with Islam. It's just they forget the one aspect of Constitution. Your religious freedom and your freedom of speech stops when it starts infringing upon mine. And that's where the separation lies. So by that very definition, Islam is an unconstitutional religion because it does not allow you those freedoms. It actually goes against our very constitution. So it is no longer a valid religion when you are trying to force it on me.
When hold on. Now let me go into this because I agree and I disagree with you at the same time.
Okay.
Okay. And what I mean by that is this very specifically. Your interpretation of how you interpret Islam to be. And believe it or not, it is the dominant view of Islam today. I can't deny that. All right. So in that regard, you're exactly right. It does require a theocracy. Okay. And a theocracy is the antithesis of the Constitution of the United States, and they can't live together. They can't coexist. You're correct in that regard. All right. But that you got to remember, though, the caveat to that is that is your interpretation. That is how you're interpreting that quote unquote religion at this point in time.
Okay.
To say that there can't be a reformation.
But how does that? But does that invalidate my point of your constitutional right stops when it infringes upon my constitutional right?
Well, the problem with that is comes once again down to a definition. What's infringement?
Well, ultimately, if I have the freedom to believe in whatever I want, then you can't say that I have to believe in what you believe in.
Well,
through penalty of political, whether that be
through penalty of law.
Oh yeah, of any kind of.
All right, no, because of any sort. No, just because I'm not okay. Understand this. Because government does something, all right, doesn't necessarily mean it's infringing upon somebody else. Just because it allows something doesn't mean that it's infringing upon somebody else.
But
that's the big thing I always end up arguing with fellow
overall,
atheists.
I would agree with what you're saying. Obviously, we're dancing on the head of the pin here.
Like the stupid, how dare you hang the 10 Commandments in a courthouse? Well, how does that necessarily infringe upon you at all? It's a plaque. Get over it.
And ultimately, exactly. And ultimately, by saying that he can't hang it up, you're actually infringing upon his rights to do that. The only argument that some people have that is it's a decent one is that it's a public place. So ultimately, you need to have like something that would be acceptable to all of the public, but that's impossible.
That's incorrect. That's not what the statute is. It doesn't have to be acceptable to everybody else. All right. The difference was, all right, and the difference remains, all right, into whether or not you have to you make a requirement. If you sit up there and said these have to be placed in here, all right, all of the 10 Commandments, for example, have to be placed in each.
Would that be infringing?
That would be infringing. All right. But the fact that somebody puts it up. The fact that people put it up within their own structures, all right, is immaterial. The other problem that I have with that is there's a difference between the federal government and the federal statutes and the state statutes.
Oh, absolutely,
and they should never have gotten involved in that debate when it came down to if it was in a federal courthouse, then I can see you go into the federal government for redress.
Exactly, it's a lot like those. It's a lot like the tearing down of statues. Why do you fucking people in California give a shit about what they have in their fucking in whatever state that you're not in? You know what I mean?
Yes,
that was my big concern. If that city had voted to take the statue down on their own volition, that would have been fine. I would have had no problem. I think you should have the right to vote for whatever you want in your own city. But to have some other city come over here and essentially use the media to shame you for your your statues for whatever reason, good or bad. Well, that's not how the republic works.
The counter to that, though, is this, and I agree with you 100%. But the counter to that would be this, right? We don't live in that kind of a society anymore, all right? Because things aren't when you talk about the local, when you talk about locality, okay, the ability to travel within the United States is completely different than what travel was like back in the 1800s, back what it was like in the 1900s. I don't see
how that makes it irrelevant.
I didn't say it was necessarily irrelevant, but what it does do is it broadens what you would consider localism.
Well, ultimately, it has to do with that's why we have state lines, because if you live within the state lines, you have a right to vote on what's there. If you do not, you have no say.
I agree with you that citizens of one state shouldn't be trying to tell citizens of another state how to freaking necessarily do this.
I'm of the opinion that the citizens of one county shouldn't tell fucking citizens of what another county should do, but that's just my humble opinion, because I'm ultimately I'm a bigger believer in shit works better when we focus on local things. And I think one of our biggest problems right now in a Western society wise is we're way too focused on federal shit and not paying attention at all to our local shit.
Well, but so you can take that too far though, because then what can happen is balkanization.
Yep.
All right, and that's what you got to be careful of. And right now we're well on our road. We are well on the way to freaking balkanization in a methodology that people will not recognize. The United States is different than the rest of the Western societies. However, we will not go the way of the Soviet Union. We will not sit up there and disintegrate. All right, the way they did. What we will turn into Rome. We'll turn into a modern Rome, because of how our government and how our society is structured. If we lose freedom in the United States, it isn't because in smaller areas people are going to lose freedom in certain areas, and we're going to sit up there and have Croatia or Bosnia Herzegovina or Czech versus Slovak or anything like that. We're not going to disintegrate that way. What will happen is it's going to be a consolidated to the Roman Empire, where it's going to be Pax for freaking America all over the world, guaranteed through the use of force.
Well, the only way that I think would end up working is if you were to actually manage some severe gun control that would start restricting our ability to privately defend ourselves. Because in order to make that work, it would have to happen slowly, and you would have to make sure that you can mitigate the amount of resistance you're going to have.
That's an internal issue. All right. From an external perspective, I'm talking about what's going to happen from an external perspective.
Okay.
Right? You internally, yeah, the American citizens will still have guns. In fact, they'll be able to use those guns overseas whenever they want. And if you don't like it, we'll put in the U.S. military to make sure you understand that U.S. citizens can walk around armed in your country, or else.
I still think
will happen.
What I think we should do, I think we should pull out of every country across the oceans and bring all our military back here, and then invade Canada and Mexico and just take care of the whole area.
We could do that, all right. But the reality is right now we've got too many entanglements as the world currently exists within. We would have to sit up there and draw back, but you have to do it in pieces and little bits at a time. And the rest of the world that has been bitching at the United States is going to see that. You are going to go back to seeing Fortress America because you're driving us that way. The rest of the world,
and honestly, we should do it. I'm really tired. I'm really tired of the international bullshit, because ultimately, here's the thing: our Constitution has given us kind of a perspective to allow people to think as they want to think, as much as we may disagree. So we always kind of dance this line of where, even though you're not even covered under our Constitution, we're still kind of instinctively giving you that right because we're kind of used to doing that anyway. That idea, because we do that and then they just kind of abuse it, we're going to end up essentially becoming more harsh about how we look at other people, because we're not, to quote Rodney Dangerfield, we got no respect.
No, kind. You're right, we don't. And people are going to sit up there and that's going to happen. Mad Dodger, you back?
Oh yeah, you guys have just been rolling, so I didn't want to interrupt.
I do that, man. I come in and I steal your show. I feel bad about it, but I was listening to fucking MC talk, and I was like, I got to get in on this.
Well, the thing about the Iraq issue that puts it into a very emotional context with me is the fact that what happens in Iraq and what happened in Iraq, in my opinion, has a lot to do with the fact that we were stabbed in the back by our own people, and I'm not real happy about it. And it's the same thing that happened to the people that went over in Vietnam. There was no reason for us to sit up there and lose the Vietnam War, except for the fact that you had freaking leftists in this country that stabbed us in the back.
Unfortunately,
and what's the result? The people that we were trying to help basically get turned into slaves.
I don't disagree with you, but I would like to add one other thing. I'm gonna let Mad Dodge speak, because I think this is kind of important. They also ruined it for a lot of the people who were somewhere in the center or somewhere right-leaning center with the Patriot Act. Ultimately, you had leftists who ran their particular agenda, but then the right also did massive infringements on our Fourth Amendment rights, and we just kind of ran with it because it was the Patriot Act. So excuse me, they kind of screwed themselves over with Bush's lack of fucking ability to actually lead in any real capacity. And
who was it? Who was it that was demanding that we sit up there and bring down those walls and bring that down? Who was it? Who was it that was demanding that they were just asleep at the switch? All right, and that we didn't connect the dots. Who was it that was pushing that agenda?
Okay, so here's the thing, though, MC. You're right. The people and the politicians who represent the people reacted in an emotional way after 9/11. The whole world was fucking shocked. You know, it's the only time I've ever seen my football coach and history teacher cry, and we watched it in history class. All right, so I get that. I supported Afghanistan because they told us to fuck ourselves. Well, you know, as Toby Keith said, we'll put a boot in your ass. That's the American way. So that was all fine. It was when they started to kind of turn on Iraq, and it seemed really obvious to me that he just wanted to finish the job that his dad didn't. And I didn't like that. And I don't really necessarily like this idea of, you know, Hillary running for president. You know, you got the Clintons, you got the Bushes. No, we don't have royalty, and that's what these people are kind of.
It really does feel that way, though, doesn't it? I mean, ultimately, even when the only reason I was even remotely interested in Barack Obama was I had never heard of him before. He just kind of popped out of nowhere. So that for me was interesting because I had, you know, when we had Bushes and we had Clintons and shit, those were names I had actually recognized prior to elections happening. You know, I had already heard of them. I already knew who they were. But Barack Obama came out of fucking nowhere. So that was one of those things that at least kept him interesting versus John McCain, who I already knew very well.
We still would have been better off with John McCain than we would have been with Barack.
Oh, I can't believe I actually voted for McCain, but yeah, I also voted for what the fuck was his name? Ran against Bush. No, ran against Bush. Fucking.
Oh, Al Gore.
Not Gore. The other.
John Kerry.
You voted for John Kerry?
Me too.
Yeah, I went from Democrat to Republican to Libertarian. That was the way I kind of progressed in my political leanings.
Yeah, you went and you dipped your foot in both ends of the water and went, fuck it, I think this pool is filled with shit.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, I got Afghanistan and I still support that. And we shouldn't have our troops there guarding poppy fields. We should have took out the enemy.
Man, I want my heroin.
And kept the territory.
No, I need my heroin.
Then let us sit up there and get the damn job done and stop complaining about how we getting it done.
Maybe we could guard schools.
No, I want to change the school system. I think federalizing the school system was a huge mistake and has had disastrous results.
It's a fair point.
Hey, memes, you're reverbing a bit. Fix your audio.
Yeah, I'm hearing myself.
There you go.
But no, I didn't want you to leave.
Oh, he'll come back. He's just resetting the thing.
All right. Well, anyway, the thing about that is, you know, like you were saying with the poppy fields, you know, why don't we just grow our own poppy fields and, you know, sell heroin?
Well, let me ask you a question. Why were we guarding the poppy fields to begin with? Who was making that decision that we needed to guard the poppy fields? I guarantee it wasn't a military decision.
No, it was probably a lobbyist influencing a politician.
Okay, and
which has to go back to business,
and that goes back to a lot of the problems that we're dealing with.
It's business,
which is the military has its when you let the military function the way it needs to function. All right, granted, it's part of the civilian. The civilians have to have command. All right, but if you had gotten out of the way. If people had gotten out of the way and let us do what we needed to do instead of carping about every freaking thing and the expectations that people have, the worst thing that we did, the very worst thing that we ever did, all right, was during during the war in Kuwait, right? The first Desert Shield, Desert Storm, right, was showing all these smart bombs because people got the impression that we are so perfect with our bombs, we can just kill this one single individual and leave everyone else around. That's not how wars work. That isn't even how the war was working at that time. But everybody wants it sanitized. Everybody wants this thing that it's going to be nice, clean, neat, and we can do it on the cheap. You can't. Warfare sucks. Warfare is horrible.
If you're raised in a society where nothing ever happens to you and everything's given to you and it's done with this mass efficiency that you're used to seeing, and there's you don't understand how war works because you've never been there. A lot of people's idea of war has to do with like Call of Duty.
Oh, it's not in our backyard. Yeah,
that's one of the reasons why I think we should demand that you have to serve public service, all right, before you're allowed to vote.
I would say that while I would agree with that, I would say that
right
it
to
would
vote
be National Guard only. If you don't volunteer for a specific military thing, you do National Guard because ultimately your job as a U.S. citizen is to defend your nation. So
I said public service
to do so.
I said
it doesn't.
I know. I just wanted to be specific.
I don't believe that we need as large of a standing army as we have, much less required conscription. Are you fucking kidding me? No, you've
already signed a social contract as a citizen that if you're going to vote, you can get conscripted into the draft. Now, if you have what is known as a training situation, you have everybody who is essentially ready to go.
Should we bring back the property law then? You have to be a property owner to vote? I mean, how draconian do you want to go here?
I don't know. Our property law is still in effect because ultimately the draft thing is still in effect.
That is true. The selective services, every man has to sign, not women, which is kind of odd.
Which I would change that as well, especially if you're going to push this fucking equality thing.
I wouldn't push that. I wouldn't change that. If a woman wants to vote, let her volunteer.
Well, here's the interesting thing. That's actually how Germany has its like higher education set up. If you want to have government or state assistance, I think they run it by the actual states over there. If you want to actually go to school and not have to pay for it, and actually assuming you have the ability to test in and are likely capable of completing that major, if you either go and serve in the military or you do public service, so like you help out in hospitals and stuff. I mean, that's not a bad thing. It's that you tend to want to keep it voluntary.
Because ultimately people are lazy.
You got to be very careful with that.
But ultimately, how you word it will get you how you can have it work.
The problem with having a civilian military or a volunteer military, all right, is the military itself, in and of itself, is a separate cultural identity within a nation. All right, and if it's
but if everybody's trained under it, wouldn't that make a cultural identity?
But that's not. Hold on, that's not the same thing as being voluntary. If it's an all-volunteer force, and this is something that I've recognized going on in our own military, it starts to feed into itself. Now, currently, it's not a big issue because there's still plenty of people that go into the military from outside of that cultural identity. But the longer it goes on, the more that will feed into itself, and the further culturally the military will divorce itself mentally and culturally away from the population. It's a dangerous thing.
I just had an idea then. All right, tell me if it's a bad idea or not. So you can go right to the front of the line to immigrate to the United States if you serve for the military. Do it that way. I mean, what's wrong with that?
I mean, if you're of age and you're able to, I mean, ultimately that will be a stipulation that would be required based upon physical requirements as well. So ultimately,
what you want to do,
grandma's not going to join up and be the military so she can get here. But if you're of age where the military could use you, absolutely, that should absolutely be an option.
Has that ever happened in the past?
I don't know.
Yeah, I was kind of channeling Rome there when they hired the barbarians, and that was kind of their downfall. But I thought you did agree.
I heard something about Rome earlier. Rome sounded like an amazingly beautiful, structurally, architecturally society.
But you also have to look at it as the other way around. Do you consider Mexico barbarians, or do you look at them as people?
Are the Mexicans barbarians?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm just saying, if you're going to argue that it was going to be our downfall because it was Rome's downfall,
MC needs to give selective cases of barbarism.
All right. I have to give selective cases.
Well, there are heads on pikes out in the desert. So
there are barbarians in Mexico, but the ones that are trying to flee from Mexico to become U.S. citizens, if you're able to weed out the barbaric ones,
the ones from MS-13.
Yeah, if we can weed those out and have.
Have we been weeding them out?
Apparently more effectively now than before.
Well, that's yet to be established. One would
Oh,
hope
according to certain news outlets, we've been doing a little.
According to the Chiefs Fuhrer, yeah.
Yeah, I mean Heil.
What was that?
It's Cheeto Fuhrer.
I'm sorry.
Cheeto Fuhrer. That's good. It's good. But yeah, it's one of those things that it's not a bad idea on its own, but I think it would be more like an option than just a requirement. So, like, if as you're coming into immigration, we look at you. Oh, you're 31. You're in good shape. Would you like to be? Would you like to be a citizen in the next 3 years by serving in our military? You would. Fantastic.
And how are you going to ask them that?
Hola, ¿cómo está?
Yeah,
you learn English.
Half your military can't understand what the other half is saying.
Well, are we going to accept absolutely everybody that applies to the military, or
ultimately, if it helps, it would help. If we need it, if there's a surplus, then no, it would be an option that would go away because it would just be a waste.
Yeah, no, because like when I was looking to go in, like at one point as an officer, like I had taken the ASVAB before, I took it again, and they're like, all right, and then I started chasing a girl. So
there you go. That's the fucking women. It stop you from serving your country again.
Those points in life where you kind of so going back to Rome for a second, it's like this is kind of one of the reasons why I after I finished mowing the lawn, I'm like, wait a second, I'm hearing American imperialism. Yeah, I get it. We've been playing world police and everything. I think I've heard arguments against that on many sides, and now I heard that. At one point, MC was saying, yes, as an American citizen, you can go wherever you want in the world and be able to use your guns whenever you want because
that was a joke.
No. Second Amendment.
That conversation came about by a warning that I was giving that the United States will not fall in a balkanization the way.
He was making a joke out of what I was saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was restarting the lawnmower at one point. My headset slipped off. But
we made an argument. He had made a joke response. And that was the joke response.
Well, no. I mean, that's the terrifying thing is it could absolutely be true. And then that brings up, well, if all of a sudden we are literally absolute break brother and we aren't viewed as noble in the world, what happens if the world teamed up on us?
How can the world team up on us?
Yeah, we have nukes.
America's the biggest.
Fuck you. We'll just blow everything up because we're crazy.
No, but then I go and ask, I'm like, if everyone just launched at us, like, well, to be fair, protocols, yeah, we would destroy them.
Yeah,
okay.
It would just, that just wouldn't happen. So if you're talking invasion, that probably would not be likely simply unless we get rid of our gun control laws, and if we end up doing the essentially imperialistic military-esque, which is ultimately what we've been good at for the past ever, that it's going to be a bitch to fight us.
It's literally
they have to get through our military, they have to get through our navy because we're also surrounded by oceans, and then they have to get through our citizens who are most likely armed with the scary numbers that Fox likes to use.
It sounds like my experience on Alpha Arc when I was playing Arc Survival Evolve and stuff. What do you do once you become the established power? Basically, yeah, you'll let other places flourish and stuff like that, but once they get up to a certain technology level, you kind of got to like smash them down because otherwise
he might be a threat.
And then if somebody actually does break into your base, you got your normal folks there that will just keep on coming at them wave after wave. So I mean, like the similarities are actually kind of creepy.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. The only way that's going to end up happening is if you end up having all the nations of the world uniting under a single idea, and really they can't really unite under anything unless, of course, I don't know, there's just a handy-dandy religion that can get everybody to just agree on something and have everybody react the same way every time. And we can create radicals that will do things on their own. We don't really actually have to fund it or do anything or even be tied into it. We can just be like, hey, by the way, if you do this, we won't necessarily be upset about it.
Well, many religions have instances of that.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not arguing that, but one's just a little bit more proactive about it.
You have ones that currently you had religions that were strapping bombs to their chest. All religions do that?
I think individuals from every religion have done that.
Strap bombs to their 5-year-old children and sent them in?
Oh, that sounds very terrible and a very psychopathic thing to do, whoever would do that.
Well, there's only one religion that I know that's ever done that in history.
Well, are like all folks of that religion doing that, or were there just a couple of folks that were going nutty and did crazy shit?
Somebody is sitting there strapping a bomb to their child, and the rest of the people are cheering them on.
When the hell did this happen?
The vast majority of them are cheering them on. They say that this is this is what the Palestinians have said.
By the way,
in many times in their surveys and stuff that they've done, that it's perfectly.
I want to point something out really quick. Just it's not bombs on chests of children, but conscripting little kids and teaching them how to kill people and use their basically their kids' innocence to trick adults.
That shit's
is an old tactic.
Africa and just
it's an old tactic to use kids as a military weapon or a military.
Yeah.
There are tricking children, but then again, the idea of when a child was a child is a little bit different from in the way we look at things in Western society today.
I'm just saying that it's not just a religion that does that; that it's ultimately a tactic, and I think it's just a religion that happens to be using a tactic.
There's a difference between using a kid's innocence and to trick the enemy versus one where you're blowing up your own children.
But ultimately, if you're going to be sending kids in to be in a warlike situation, you've already written them off as dead because they're soldiers.
Usually,
typically, like somebody harming or murdering a child. Usually,
a child has a chance. There's a difference between when a child has a chance and when a child has absolutely no chance.
No. I'm not disagreeing with you, and it's just, and again, I feel I kept on hearing the same story again and again. I'm like.
Here's the question.
Like, no, don't get me wrong. No, I
understand what you're saying, but something's occurred.
Why?
Something's occurred to me. All right. Should we tolerate that viewpoint?
Which viewpoint are we talking about?
I think most folks.
The viewpoint of strapping a child, having a society that straps bombs on their children to blow up schools.
Probably not. No, especially if it's happening here.
So why do you get upset that we're actually involved in Iraq, in Iran?
Because we're not in control of Iraq. Iraq should be responsible for their own crimes and their own criminals.
All right, but they're not, and they're letting and these kind of things.
Well, then well, here's the thing. How about this? Hold on. Let me give you a reverse. Let me give you a reverse one. Let's say, let's take the UK. Why isn't the UK coming over here and policing our schools? Because we have kids shooting each other in the schools. I mean, should they tolerate that?
Our guns are bigger.
No, because that's not what's happening in our schools. We are policing that. We are trying to stop that kind of things. They're not trying to stop it there. They're
how do you know? You're upset with the methods.
How do I know? I can watch what they're doing.
My point is you're not in the inner workings of those governments, so they might be trying to stop it. They're just not as effective as us. Why are we the ones? Even though we have
there's a huge difference from the government program that sits up there and gives money to the families of kids that do that celebrate them as freaking martyrs.
How is it America's responsibility to police that?
So it sounds like, and I believe I'm aware of the group that you're referring to, and I know payments have been made for certain individuals. It wouldn't necessarily be beyond belief that if they paid somebody for basically sacrificing a child in order to kill their enemy. No, but what I'm seeing is this is basically the real life enactment of what we see on fucking Twitter. Folks fucking celebrating, literally, like folks like Total Biscuit dying. Yes, that's not an equivalent scenario. Yes, the man had cancer. Yes, fucking blowing up children is fucking wrong. I believe fucking most folks believe that. And yeah, some folks are fucking sick, crazy bastards out there that do horrible shit, MC. Let me just finish this point. Give me like 15 seconds. What I'm saying is, my question for this situation is, why is this happening? We talk about Iraq. Okay, all of a sudden, hey, now you're in charge of a government where you were oppressed. We'll use that cringy term. Oh, guess what? Oil's $100 a barrel. Have fun. What could go wrong except for superstition, fear, jealousy, and, oh yeah, human greed? It's just, yes, Mad Dodge is right, and Manic is right as well. It's like, these are complex situations. MC, I get it. You're coming from a militaristic standpoint. What you are saying, I am not disagreeing with it was a tactic, but just because it's a tactic that will work strategically in that respect, that doesn't necessarily make it right.
It doesn't matter. Whoa. So, in other words, what's right in your opinion, doesn't work. So let's just keep doing the thing that doesn't work. That's called insanity.
Oh, I never said that.
No, that's exactly what you said.
No, that's what you're inferring because you're trying to categorize.
You said, hold on a second.
That's what I'm hearing.
Hold on, because something else you said is inaccurate as well. You said that the majority of people think that that's wrong. all right, to strap a bomb on their child's chest and send them in and go blow up a school, all right, and that it's fucking sick. No, it isn't that way in a lot of these societies, especially the Arab society.
I said most. I never specified. I believe most folks in this world believe it's wrong to blow.
I don't think most people in this world believe it's wrong. I think if you sit up there and if you added
I'm afraid. I'm the idiot.
MC, do you believe most folks are good people?
I think people are generally good people. Yes.
Okay, well, I don't see why we disagree.
Just because you're a good person necessarily doesn't mean you're not willing.
Oh, you still do stupid shit.
Evil.
Okay.
No,
that's not up to contention. No, that's not up to contention. Well, I want to throw this down real quick. That's not up to contention that people do horrible shit. You said that most people don't. You disagreed with that. Most people don't believe it to be a bad thing. Now, just because you do something does not necessarily mean you are proud of it or thought it was a good idea. There's a thing called regret. Ultimately, the ones who are doing it and have no problem with it, they are a minority of people, and most people would agree that strapping bombs to kids or doing harm to kids would be a bad thing.
No, and MC, let's hone in on this point. I believe I know kind of like where you're coming from in that, yes, I have watched a lot of Fox News. Yes, I have looked at some of these polls. I believe one of the polls you're talking about is either if somebody knew that something shady was going on, or if there happened to be an attack upon what quote unquote infidels, would you necessarily go out of your way to condemn it? And yes, there was an alarmingly large amount of folks that said they would not condemn it. My question is, why the hell is, because yeah, even if they say a substantial percent, yes, not most, but a frighteningly high amount, would that actually translate to them doing it? No, but of a small percentage of those folks, which is still a lot of fucking people, yes, they would support. Maybe they would do something like that. My question is why? And the best I can boil it down into is if all of a sudden I put on the news and I see it like my second cousin's wedding, all of a sudden a fucking bomb just goes off or something like that and people die. That affects. Those are large families, dude. If all of a sudden, dude,
I'm telling you right now that is completely not the way they think. That's how you think.
I'm not them.
That's how you think.
That's true.
They don't think this way. The people that are part of those cultures do not.
You're not going to hold a grudge.
They believe in vengeance in a certain manner. All right, but not the way that you and I think of it as. All right. And I guarantee they don't think of it the same way. All right. They don't think like we do. And it isn't. And the problem isn't how they think. The problem is how they act. Okay. Well, I don't care how they think. I don't care if they believe X, Y, and Z. I do care if they're sitting up there and providing how do I say
the financing for such things,
the logistical and moral support for these kind of actions. If they're engaging in that, as far as I'm concerned, they should be looked upon as the enemy. And the fact is that we don't.
Groups are classified as terrorist organizations by our government.
No, that's the entire culture. The entire culture is the one. This guy's sitting up there celebrating, having his quote unquote, as Mad Dodge wants to point out constantly. These guys are walking down the street of Pakistan in Islamabad, and you think that these people don't know? The people around them don't know who they are? That they don't know that these guys are terrorists? And why? Well, then why aren't they trying to stop
they see them as
why
freedom
aren't they
fighters?
Doing something to put an end to that kind of activity? And I'll tell you why. Because they don't think like we do. They don't see a problem necessarily with what they're doing.
You would have to specify if you're talking about in certain nations where there are U.S. forces over there. I mean, for them, they see it as somebody that's not from their country, that's in their country.
They don't care.
I remember when there was a foreign force here
that is just
we saw as outsiders that we started using guerrilla tactics. I am not excusing the murder of innocent people, not at all.
It means that is your listening to what their propagandists say. That is not how they think.
You're right. I've never asked somebody deeply that has been in that situation. You're correct.
If you go over there and you start talking to those people in a large context, yes, there's commonality between human beings to an extent, but there are huge, massive cultural differences that we will never bridge. because they don't think like we do, and they never friggin' will. If you talk to a Japanese person, especially one prior to that came up in World War II, all right, they will tell you that they thought that Japan attacking the United States was wrong. That the atrocities of Nanking and the atrocities that were conducted by, I think it was 517, Area 517, were absolutely horrible. Not one of them would ever step up and stop it, though. Okay,
well,
because they don't
same as in Nazi Germany.
They don't culturally think the same way. Culturally, they don't think like Americans do. It was okay to brutalize Americans. Why? Because Americans had surrendered, so therefore they had lost all honor, so therefore you could treat them less than dirt. Do you think that's
no? I hear you, but
from a cultural standpoint, that was their cultural overlay. Okay, so you can't, and that's the same kind of problem that you're dealing with these Middle East cultures. And yet, what do I constantly hear? Oh, we killed civilians in a drone strike. Oh, and that's what's making them mad? No, they're already mad.
Again,
that is not.
MC, I go back. Aside from essentially committing genocide, no, it's aside from committing genocide, is there another solution?
No.
That's where we disagree.
Oh, really? Show me yours, because in history, there's never been one.
Really? There haven't been things used to actually help get folks that hated each other to all of a sudden find commonality?
From culturally?
I think the Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, would argue with that. I have to think about 2 million members in religion kind of seems like
what did Muhammad basically say about the infidel? Slay the infidel?
Yeah, what point in his life was that? Was that after he was betrayed?
Oh, it has.
I mean, human beings. I mean, as far as I know, he was a human being. Because I remember.
I'm sorry. So you're coming up with excuses now. Well, he didn't mean it in this case, but now he meant it this way. Okay, I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way. You're making excuses for him now. I can't believe you. He's starting to make excuses for the Quran and what the Quran basically says.
Yeah, because I'm not going to condemn 2 billion people to fucking death.
You don't have to condemn.
I disagree with some of the
we didn't have to condemn all the Japanese to death, but they had to come to the point where they believed they were going to be exterminated before they stopped the war.
Yes. And when I entertained that idea back in high school, I came to the same conclusion. All right, fiber bombing campaign to wipe out potentially millions, or estimated potentially like 120, 200,000 cows. Yes, we're fucking talking about human lives there, but I understand.
They were talking about 500,000 dead. They were talking approximately 2 million casualties.
No, and I understand why that was made. And again, you can always Monday or fucking 50-year quarterback all day long, but regardless,
and that's what you're doing here. You're saying there's another method, and you're saying there's another method you're saying that there's another method to take a 12th century culture, all right, that worships death, that has no regard for human life. Absolutely no Western philosophy that life is precious. They do not believe life is precious. And you're going to tell me that there exists an example in history where they said, you know what, we're going to give this up. I want to see it. I want you to show it to me.
Okay. Well, so as aside from the slander of the Islamic faith there, and you're construing several things into other things, I'll give you an example right there. How about one of the pillars of actual Islam itself?
Show me
actually giving to the poor, helping take care of the special needs.
You had a cultural identity.
That sounds something actually to help.
Don't preach Islam to me.
Seems like cherishing human life.
Oh, wait a minute. So let me get this. Wait, hold on, MC. You want him to provide an example, but you don't want him to actually say the example that he want to hear?
Well, no.
I want an example in history where a population group, where he says a population group changed, where a cultural identity population group that he's claiming we're identifying, yes, is generally Muslim. All right. I said this before. The problem isn't Islam as much as the 12th century cultural mentality overlay of it. And I'm saying, show me that 12th century mentality overlay where you didn't have to use overwhelming force with the threat of genocide to frickin' stop its attack on the rest of the world or its neighboring society. If you can give me an example of that, then fine. But I'm waiting for it.
Well, they did retreat after Vlad the Impaler, earned his name. So, and then he laughed. They went
Come
back.
on, Vlad did nothing wrong.
And what did Vlad the Impaler do?
Nothing wrong.
Vlad the Impaler.
I'm gonna get a Vlad the Impaler tattoo, and that's what's gonna say. Vlad did nothing wrong.
To be fair,
Oh,
Vlad was one of my favorite battle bots ever.
It was amazing.
He did excellent. but to go back to what MC was saying, so speaking of nations that happen to harbor maybe certain face, how about Indonesia, which has a mixed economy in both the private sector and the government as well. In 2017, it had a GDP of over $1 trillion US. Okay. I mean, things seem to be okay there. So it's just like MC, and again, like,
hold on a second. What's the culture?
I just want to
no, because you pulled them up, and the reason you pulled them up is because you see Islam and you don't see it culturally. This was a group of people, all right. Indonesia specifically. Hold on here. I'm not. Hold on. You're trying to use this as an example of a culture, but the Indonesian culture, okay, is not a 12th century culture.
Question. Just a quick question. I just have a quick question, really. Just a quick question. How can you talk about religion that influences a culture, and when you're talking about somebody's culture? I mean, how do you avoid that?
See, that's the problem, MC. Like Manic was saying, it's just when a lot of time ways you're using your terms. A lot of times, yes, we get fired up and we get very loose. So we paint it as all, and most. Like I said, we need to be better wizards. If we shift our language very slightly, it seems like a very minuscule difference in the moment, but overall, it makes a huge difference.
Where are our biggest problems? With a 12th century mentality. You guys are the ones conflating the 12th century mentality when I mentioned that with Islam and saying that they're exactly the same. They are interrelated in the Arab world.
Yeah, I know that, but you're the one who's going, okay, here's the 12th century mentality. Now point to me to a Muslim country that is
I didn't say point to a Muslim country. I said point to me a 12th century mentality that's been on the attack and show me where you didn't have to be absolutely brutal to suppress it.
Okay.
Why don't we just give them the internet?
No, show it to me.
No. If the problem is they have a 12th century mentality, let's fucking bring them online. Let's get Indonesia
technology
online, something like that.
Doesn't change the cultural mentality.
Give them that and Dominoes, and I think they'll be happy.
Oh no, it doesn't. It has an effect on it. No, it doesn't, and it didn't in Japan. Okay, why did the Japanese? Why did they act the way they did in World War I and World War II? Because they were going by the cultural imperatives of how they established things, and it was a 12th century.
How do they act now? How do they act now? And
it took 2 atomic bombs to change how they act now.
But what I'm saying, acting now, is they're almost surrounded by their fucking technology. They embrace it, and let me just put it this way:
they embraced it since the 1860s. When they had the Meiji Restoration in 1868, they embraced technology. They didn't change their cultural mental mindset until 2 atomic bombs later.
Well, I think here's the thing. Why are these folks doing horrible things? I think they're doing it because they don't fucking have purpose, dude.
Yeah,
if that's the only thing that gives them fucking purpose in life, it's like, what the hell are you going to do? Yeah, if you're sitting there on a farm and you can harvest some poppies and stuff, or
now
you're
just coming back with another freedom.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty good
thing,
dude, if I'm a young guy.
Once again, a U.S. or a Western philosophy of how they think.
We are using a U.S. or Western philosophy to criticize how they think. So ultimately, you can't use that as an argument for against an argument.
Hold on, you can use that because they're the ones.
No, because that means it is no longer a valid argument if it can't be used.
Sorry, but it is because
you don't use the way I do. So I criticize
the reason that it's proper is because
that sounds very lefty of you, MC. Very lefty indeed.
The problem is that where's the threat coming from?
No, MC's got a postmodernist lens now a little bit.
Where's the threat coming from? You guys sit there and say, wait a minute here, you can't do this.
He yells and screams, and then,
you guys still haven't set up because you guys keep cutting me off. You guys, let's go back to what I was saying again, okay? You say that, well, what, you can't do that. Oh, yes, I can, and here's why, all right? Because the threat isn't coming from the United States.
We're not bombing them?
We weren't. We weren't until they attacked us.
Who?
Well, when does the timeline? No. When does the timeline stop?
Because ultimately, the 9/11 guys are mostly from Saudi Arabia. We're dropping bombs on Saudi Arabia.
We're not talking about Saudi Arabia, and this
you're also forgetting about the 50s war in Iran and
what about the 50s war in Iran?
We ended up funding both sides.
Okay, well, you're talking about the Iraq-Iran war?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was in the 80s.
Well, my point is, where's the no? I'm sorry, I meant 80s. Yeah, my bad.
Okay,
where does the timeline stop for when an attack?
Were we bombing them?
Where we no longer because we've been bombing fucking. We've
when
been
did we
drone
start
bombing since Obama?
When did we start bombing in the Middle East?
Since about the 80s.
Okay, no, the 80s.
Off and on.
You don't necessarily have to be bombing in the Middle East to be fucking entangled in the goddamn Middle East and to be supplying weapons and playing geopolitical politics with people's lives.
But if we're talking attacks, we were hit once in the buildings.
Everyone else can play geopolitical politics, but it's bad for America to play it. Is that your attitude?
Mine? No,
Mad Dodge.
My attitude is we should have listened to George Washington.
We don't live in that world.
Don't jump the platitudes, Mad Dodge. We have as little respect for you already.
MD, I respect General Washington.
Yeah, see, I got the Bostonian on my side.
Yeah, you got the lefty. Congratulations.
Well, I am libertarian.
Well, you're still I still disagree. I still disagree that ultimately, if you're going to say that one argument is okay for one thing, it should be still a valid argument for the other side. Otherwise, they're both invalid, and we need to start again.
Hold on a second. What is peace?
What is peace?
Mm-hmm.
Leaving each other the fuck alone.
Yeah, I guess. How about this? Respecting each other's rights.
All right. Peace is absence of threat. That's when you have peace.
Well, then there's no peace. There's never been peace.
Well, there's never been a perfect peace, but I mean,
no, there's never been peace. There's always threat. I mean, Mother Nature's threat.
Well,
disease.
You could say we've been at war with Mother Nature since we exist.
So
yes,
there's
make that comment. But that's not what we're talking about. Peace between nations. All right, we're not talking about peace between us and Mother Nature at the moment.
Well, if you're going to go with a really vague fucking explanation of no threat, that you're essentially disregarding large-scale threats. That goes back to your whole biological weapons.
We're not talking about
illnesses.
We're not talking about biology. We're talking about nations.
So I go back to my point of peace between nations would be people respecting each other's rights. Is that a fair one?
You could define it that way, but really, you can have peace with another nation as long as they aren't a threat.
Well, if you're respecting their rights, then you're not really threatening each other, are you? Because ultimately...
Well, I disagree with you. You can sit up there and say, yeah, I'm respecting your rights while I send in my people to sit up there and try and change your mind.
No, that
I'm
would
still
be
respecting your rights. I'm respecting the way you believe.
That sounds like lobbying.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's that, and lobbyists, which is ultimately a business tool, don't care
all
about.
You do is register. So you just need to have a lot of money and
So rich people are the only ones.
Mexico, really? We found the root of some problem.
Does Mexico need a lot of money? Mexico seems to be doing pretty well by sending their poor right across the border to invade the country.
To be fair, I bought several packs of cigarettes in Mexico.
So he's a smuggler. You illegal bastard.
I was on vacation.
Yeah, so it's different. You're bringing shit over. Did you check it through customs?
Maybe.
Yeah, but you're acting like Obama didn't freaking interfere within Mexico's political infrastructure. You know, by selling the fucking cartels the guns and then just forgetting about it. Oops. I mean, come on. As if the United States doesn't meddle in everybody's fucking business all the goddamn time.
Okay. We need to clear the air on that particular topic, because ultimately our main export in anything we make relatively well, that would be guns. So it's really hard to get on people.
We make good guns.
So it's really hard to get on the government for essentially selling the thing legally or illegally. The one thing we're actually good at making.
We don't like to talk about that unless like.
So it's one of those things that we all kind of go.
We do make superior weapon systems. That's very true. But our number one export is food. Always has been.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we're very selective on who we're sending our food to. Our guns
that's why we have
we're a lot more.
We are not as selective in that as you think we are. The reason that we're limited in where we sell food is because those countries don't want us. They don't want U.S. food. They want
good.
to prevent us.
Fuck them.
And for
they
the
want
most
our guns, and so we sell them that.
and so well, yeah, we can do that too. But the reason that they're doing their own protectionism, which hence we go back to what we were starting this conversation with, which was a freaking trade war issue.
Well, my I just wanted to let you really quickly say to Mad Dodge though, the whole using that argument of selling illegal guns to thing. It's one of those things that, well, yeah, we shouldn't be doing it. We're gonna do it.
Well, sometimes we do it on and off the books.
Yeah, so you know, and honestly, as somebody who they're going to do shady business, and all their off the books is mostly done through the shady organizations, the CIA. I let it go.
No, I hear you, man. And MC, I actually do have a question for you, dude. Do you have any siblings?
Yes.
You happen to have a brother?
Yes.
You happen to have a younger brother?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of this say that, has your younger brother ever done anything kind of shitty to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you forgiven him?
Yeah.
Okay. All I'm saying is, if we got upwards of 4 to 5 billion folks that are all supposed to be children,
have you ever had
Abraham,
an older
brother? No, I am the older brother. So
okay.
Yes, I realize I was a
difference
terrible
there when you have an older brother, because I was in the middle. Let me tell you something right now. There are ways to influence the older brother. Okay. And one of those is terrorism.
That's true.
No, dude. My younger brother did say to folks when he went through some shit, it's like, yeah, I'm Memes' younger brother. If I could survive that shit, I could survive anything. So I am a horrible person. Dude, I'll straight up, I'll fucking admit that. But the reason why I say this is, if we're all children of Abraham and shit, and we have the youngest of the trifecta of the Abrahamic religions here, it's like, we have to look at our own history to try to remember it, so we don't necessarily repeat it, but at least try to avoid tending in the same direction. Try to actually learn from the past. Yes, I understand you provided military solutions that have been proposed by some people. I get that, but I truly believe that Jesus, the prophet of Nazareth, there's a reason why you had the 11th commandment there. Love thy neighbor like thy brother. And I truly think that's powerful.
Without getting into religion, there's an old Asian proverb that he who forgives ends the fight.
Okay. So
how many times have we offered forgiveness and been slapped?
That's a risk.
How many times have we gone over to Iran,
a fight
and Afghanistan, and Iraq during how many times have we gone over during their times of need, during natural disasters, to help them out, only to have them turn right around, right, and spew hatred toward us?
Entirely depends on what the deal was.
Okay, how many? We've done it time and time and time again. You keep telling you want to preach.
No. But it goes back to what's the deal?
The problem. That's not
forgiveness. That's a deal. Do you think we just go over there for our goodwill? Oh, we're so nice. No, we're not. We're not nice.
Believe it or not, the campaign,
like every other
I hate to tell you this, but not everything was done by people back in those time frames when they sit up there and pulled frick money out of their pockets to help people in need. Wasn't just sitting there driven by their own selfish desires. Not everything is done that way.
Yeah, I'd say more. I'd say the vast majority, which includes what we do. Because we are the vast majority of our own actions.
I'm sorry, but that is completely cynical. And while there's an accurate assessment of it to an extent, it doesn't follow through all the way.
Being cynical doesn't change reality. I'm not saying you have to just fucking.
So if you want to change reality over there, do you want to change the reality over there or not? Because whether you like it or not, the reality is this: they will keep attacking us. They will keep sending bombs. They will keep sending people to assassinate us.
Your solution to the reality? Just really quick, what's your solution to change their reality?
Bomb them till they say we
so your change of reality would be potentially annihilation because of the fact that they have
I want them to recognize that we are willing to exterminate them.
So let me get this straight. We go and bomb them because they attack us, and we want them to give up their views because we're going to attack them.
I want to bomb them, but then I want to bomb them until they surrender.
Oh, okay. And that'll totally make it so that
we're back to Rome.
Yeah, very good.
Perfect. Back to World War II. Because that's what it took.
Hi, voice.
Hey, Memes. Mad, I don't know why you keep letting commies on your stream, but you've like 2 of them tonight.
Wait, who's the other commie? Am I the other commie?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, finally, I'm recognized for my comradian views.
I've been listening to this for this past hour or so, and it's been quite interesting. But as much as it's admirable that memes and idiot have this, touchy-feely, let's all hope for the best thing, the simple fact is that MC is correct here. You're not going to change. What?
Oh, I was going to say that my whole touchy-feely thing has nothing to do with my actual views. My point is, if you're going to do this, be honest about it. We're trying to do this touchy-feely PC bullshit by trying to sell it as a war on terrorism, and this, we've got these justifications that we don't even hold to our own standards. So,
but we're
just going to be the fucking bullies that we are.
I don't disagree with you.
Do it.
Sorry.
Okay.
Let's be honest here. What has solved the most fighting in the world? The person with the biggest gun.
That's
The
true.
simple fact is,
Nukes have solved everything. I'm just telling you.
I agree again.
well,
What are we talking
actually,
about, guys?
We're killing each
I
other.
had to-
Talking about killing each other,
We were talking about establishing the American Roman Empire.
and doing away with Islam. That was
Pax
the other thing we were-
Americana. Get it right.
So anyway, no, I'm actually, here's the thing, in a reality sense, I'm with memes on a practical, the way it works. But ultimately, the when you deal with fighting with more fighting, you create more fighting. So unless your goal is to annihilate the idea by annihilating those that believe in it, it's just going to perpetuate the situation, because that's what always happens.
what did the atomic bomb do? Did it start keep the fighting going, or did it stop it? It
It
stopped.
gave us Godzilla.
But here's the difference between where we dropped the atomic bombs, which was on an island. Ultimately,
same
if
thing
you're
with
dropping
UK.
bombs in the Middle
Monica,
East, you're just going to turn into a
Monica,
big glass
Monica,
plate that
Monica,
scatter
Monica,
around in all
Monica,
directions.
Monica. No, we have plenty. We can do the whole Middle East. Don't worry.
All right, well, we'll just turn the
To-
whole
to
fucking
be
area into
fair,
a
to be fair,
radioactive
we actually have been
wasteland.
running
I'm
out
sure
of
that
bombs.
won't have any side effects whatsoever. That will be detrimental to our fucking societies.
But, let me ask MC and voice this as we're trying to balance the conversation out. Are you going to respect somebody that cucks to you that you don't trust?
Well, I don't trust anybody. And I
No. What I'm saying is, if you don't trust somebody, and then yes, all of a sudden they make some novel concession to try to get you on board, but you don't trust them. I mean, are you going to see progress? That's the thing, dude. We don't fucking trust each other, so that's why we're resorting to the military option, dude.
Hold on, we don't trust. That is not why it is not a lack of trust that is causing the freaking people from the Middle East, all right, to come over here and try and extend their caliphate.
Okay, can I say one thing though?
Sure.
It's the 74th anniversary of D-Day.
Yes, it
Fuck
is.
yeah, America. Just wanted to say that.
No, I agree.
Fuck
Fuck
off,
yeah,
show
America.
up. No. Show up a year and a half late and be paid to show up a year and a half late.
Oh my
Fuck
God,
off.
you and Cabbage, shut the fuck
Oh,
up.
you know what? But bottom line is, we're still a little sore about that goddamn fucking Revolutionary War. And guess what? We decided, you know what? Let's see if you fucking cunts can handle it.
Hey,
You
hey,
can't because
yeah,
you're pansies
yeah,
and
Monica,
still run
Monica
under
is
a
the only one
monarchy.
here in
What a
black
fucking
and
bunch of
white,
faggots.
Get in, faggot, we're saving Europe.
Monica, why don't you go and suck the French's cock like you did to win the Civil War?
Oh my God.
You mean the Revolutionary
You mean
War.
the Revolutionary War, not the Civil War. We did that all on our own. Thanks.
Yeah, we
No,
were
you
sucking
did it
each
there,
other
too.
off on the fucking Civil War. Get it right, you
They
fucking-
gave
Hey,
us a nice
calm down,
statue.
buddy.
What?
They gave us a nice statue.
Shut up, memes. God damn it.
You're not talking about
Can we
that
send it back?
horrible.
I'm not that impressed by it. Can we send it back?
Yeah.
Well,
So,
what makes me laugh about all that is, yeah, they gave us that because they thought it was trash, and we turned it into something. Oh, look, we can polish a turd.
Yankee
And now
ingenuity.
everybody sits up there and goes, "Oh, it was wonderful. Oh yeah, we gave you that. We gave you that. Remember, we gave you that.
Well,
You
yeah,
were
now we
just trying to
charge
empty your
people $30
freaking
a pop.
trash yard.
Yeah,
You
let's
freaking
drop it.
unload this.
Let's drop it into the ocean, and who cares anymore? Because it's not even applicable. And
No,
Let's load this up.
Manic,
Let's
you
use
are
piece of
wrong. We
crap
need to
and
get
throw
enough
tear
it in
down
there.
all the
slime. We need to
statues.
get enough slime the whole thing, and then play
no,
some
I like your
badass
idea, but
music,
no.
and we shall ride on Lady Liberty.
Way
Actually,
better idea. Way better idea. We could do. And think about it. We
the
can go.
real
We can
reason-
cross. No, we can cross the ocean over to the Islamic countries and just start bashing all the fucking, until they submit.
No,
like
we're not
MC
letting
wants
that
and
MC
no
start yelling.
radiation.
MC, please start yelling again.
Oh, I was
Monica,
my voice is a little sore, so I'm trying to give it a rest
Monica.
for a moment. I'll yell in a few seconds.
the reason America got a statue is because they made 3 of them, so they gave one away. That's why you got it. You didn't get it
Is
because
it like a
they
ring of
liked it.
power?
Oh, good. Then, like I said, let's just get rid of it because ultimately it doesn't matter. And I trust a weird Scottish guy.
Scottish.
Don't fucking
You
start.
haven't-
I do that just to piss you
Oh,
off.
God.
I do that just to piss you
Wait.
off.
Here we go.
I thought he was Scott. Oh, oops. Sorry, Mr. Nation Do voice. But hold on. I need to get MC to start yelling again. So I'm not
Commies
sure I'd
get the
ever think
ball
those.
too.
Well, no, I need to level up my communism at this point. So I'm not sure I'd ever be agreeing with necessarily something that ISIS said, but there is something that they said that holds true. And that as long as you go out of the way to bomb our weddings and funerals, we will fight you. And I think that is the connecting point that many folks that may never take part in such things may acknowledge.
propaganda.
That
Bullshit.
MC, please,
that
if
is
I
a
may.
problem.
Wait. What? Who's
No,
bombing
Ingrid
what
Reed's
now?
Hang on. If I may take this one, MC. Listen, when we drop the atomic bombs all over the Middle East, there won't be any weddings or funerals. Problem
You
solved.
haven't done shit.
And again, I would prefer to avoid genocide because that's wrong.
You
America.
shit in one hand,
America
shit
did
in the
that.
other, and see which one fills faster. Memes.
Well, that's why you use your left hand.
You want touchy feely. I want. That's not the way the world works.
Okay, what's I want and touchy feely shit? What are we talking? What the
I
fuck?
don't want to be really cruel to actually win the war. I just want to do it so that we can all get along and then we can all sing Kumbaya together.
No, I'm trying to stop
you're essentially wanting to fight cruelty with cruelty, which seems a little bit, I don't know, odd.
I don't know,
Because
man. It worked for Sun Tzu in the fucking Chinese dynasty.
Again, you had to eliminate your opponent in order for that to work, because you have to eliminate the idea.
No, you have to eliminate them as a threat where they no longer want to pose a threat to you.
And if they're willing to strap bombs to their children and
Then you
themselves,
bomb them until they no longer want to do that or can't.
so basically, like I said, you want to annihilate them. At least we're being honest about the fucking conversation.
You have to be willing to annihilate them. You are correct.
Which you will have to do because you're dealing with
You won't very few times
idea that has lasted.
You have to be willing to do it, but to be honest, most people will not take it to that point. Most societies will say a society is built around continuation. And when that
they will also
continuation,
tell you what you want to hear.
hold on, they will stop because the continuation will get them killed and annihilated. And if they're willing to hold on, and if they're willing to believe that that's going to happen to them, they will stop.
Yeah, until they decide they want to start again. So did they ever stop?
Well, when will they start again? When will they start again, Manic?
Well, think about every bad idea we tried to stomp out. Eventually, it tries to make a comeback, doesn't it?
When not societies don't. Societies don't regress that way necessarily. At least not very
well, let's see. We started the Crusades after retaliation when the Muslims invaded us, and then we basically pushed them all the way back. And oh my God, they're still here!
What do you mean push them all the way back?
We brought the fight to them and they gained back their control of the land they lost.
Okay, but why?
Because they were pushed into and invaded.
No, they weren't pushed into and invaded. The fact was that they decided to attack it again when they said it.
But my point
they saw these people. Hold on, when these people were weak, it wasn't that they were sitting up there. They were not. They were not sitting there going, "Okay, we surrender." They never said we surrender.
Oh, well, eventually the Crusades stopped. So somebody had to sign a deal.
Who the problem is, who are we going to get to surrender? Because this isn't really a nation.
You know when the Crusades stopped?
And that's the goddamn problem. Thank you. Finally.
Hold on a second. When did
No, that's the fucking problem. Because when you're fighting an ideology, you'd have no one.
When did their expansion stop?
When you're trying to wipe out an entire ideology, kind of like communism or what have you, then
when did they stop expanding?
Who? The
They
Islam?
still lost.
Or
They
the
still-
Muslims? Whatever.
That's my point. You're not going to stop it, and it goes back to the
No,
ideology.
They did stop and they pulled back because all of a
And
sudden
look, they're expanding with a new way now. Oh my God!
No,
Almost
they
like
weren't
people
fighting with a
changed
new
tactics.
way. There were people that used that tactic. You named one of them Vlad.
So what the fuck?
They
are we
never
supposed-
invaded that area again,
So
did they?
then,
What the fuck are we supposed to do though? Like lay down and take it? No.
No, not lay down and take it either. My point is let them deal with their own shit. I'm tired of being, he keeps saying it's coming to our doorstep. Well, if we close off the doorstep, it won't come here.
How can you close off the doorstep?
Unfortunately, unfortunately we can't close our borders. Like as
all
in
I'm saying
people
is
entering the country. Like that's not going to stop. And it's unfortunate because I believe that we should be, isolated. However, we're a global economy now. It won't stop.
Well, either you deal with as MC said, which is to essentially go and annihilate people, which again is an option. You can't argue that it's not an effective option. It's been used before, or you isolate yourself and let them deal and essentially let the shit stir until either they deal with it, which they should be doing anyway, or they succumb, and now we deal with the enemy as one.
How do you isolate yourself when the enemy has nuclear weapons?
We let Israel handle it. They're there. They're in the middle of it.
So we're
Let them
funneling
handle
weapons to
Israel
the Middle East,
equals
right?
Us, right? You know that.
We're getting involved in a foreign entanglement. That's your solution. The one that you keep bitching about.
No, we're already involved in the foreign entanglement. I'm saying we leave the situation and let Israel handle it.
No, but I believe that we were involved in the foreign entanglement. I
And
want
what
to
if
stop the foreign entanglement.
is designed to last forever so that we can keep generating money for weapon sales. And again, that's probably not a likely scenario, but it's still a possibility if you're ultimately from a political angle that wants to make money.
Are we gonna start saying no blood for oil or whatever the fuck that
Oh
shit
hell
was?
no! Oh hell no! We need
Back in 2003.
No,
We should have nuked them back in the 80s, but
we shouldn't have. We should have invaded, cleared out the area. And
we should have nuked them back in the 80s, but now we can't. We can't do jack fucking shit now because our hands are tied.
Are they? I say we just say fuck them all and go and deal with it. What are they going to do? They don't even deal with Islam. They ain't going to care. They're going to be like, stop.
It's not like ripping off a fucking Band-Aid, dude. It isn't.
So I'm going to make this next statement with the preface of, as a junior in high school with a video satellite uplink to a local college, I asked the professor there, what would happen if we split like something smaller than just the atom? Like, let's say a neutron. He paused for a moment, and then he respectfully replied to me, well, in that case, you would create something called theoretically, a neutron bomb, a weapon which would have a small explosive yield, but irradiate huge amounts of energy, thereby killing pretty much every living thing while leaving the structure intact. And at that moment, I thought, wait, if there's a lot of problems in the Mideast, we could literally just kill everyone there, move in, and then take all that oil. I start off my statement by stating that was an idea that went through my head. It entertained. It does not seem like a good idea. What I'm saying is I think we get a lot more accomplished if the Pope and the Grand Ayatollah played a round of golf.
The Pope already made overtures. He's actually the most pro-Islamic, look the other way Pope I've ever seen in my lifetime.
He's just jealous. Look how much control they have over their fucking followers, their disciples. The Vatican's lost so much power simply because of the fact that it's not nearly as brutal, archaic and brutal as other religions are.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this current Pope, and I was raised Catholic, so I actually do care a little bit, and yeah, I'm not a big fan.
I actually like the Pope, but I'm not retarded and think that he's infallible.
Yeah, but so your judgment isn't suspect.
He's the people's Pope.
I was bad.
All right, guys, I got to head out. Thank you. This was a great conversation.
Bye, man.
All right, thank you.
Going with you.
Hey, Mole appears right when we say Pope. What do you think about the current Pope?
You really need to ask me that question?
He's
I
trying.
don't like any popes.
He's trying to change the conversation
why not?
from me bombing.
Because I'm an atheist.
See, well, you You don't have to love the guy. I mean,
Okay, I'm an anti-theist. I think that he's trying to make too many people happy by blending. I don't know. It's a long
trying to
story.
heal the world.
Yeah,
That fucking cunt.
Yeah, that too. He's a cunt.
No, I like
But
him.
I'm not a big fan of any kind of theism. So yeah, you'll have that though. You know, I'm an anti-theist.
Well, I mean, I like the dude. I don't necessarily like.
I mean, I don't dislike him as a person. I suppose I just don't like their views. I should say.
Oh no, I don't
hate
think the Pope is,
Christians.
fucking derived from God or whatever the fuck they think. I don't
Yeah, that's
believe that
weird, isn't
shit.
it? That is weird, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I'm American Catholic. I'm not Roman Catholic. Fuck all that shit.
So speaking of situations, Mole. So solving issues in the Mideast in 2 minutes or less. Go.
Oh God.
It ain't gonna happen.
Shit is too complicated.
It's not gonna happen.
We're complicated creatures.
Short of wiping them out with the nuclear
There
warheads.
you go. He goes back with the whole
I asked the question. Unsure.
I don't think there is. I don't think there is fixing the Middle East. They've been like this for thousands of years. There's too much. There's too much water under the bridge. There's too much turmoil in the Middle East. There's too much infighting. There's too much tribalism still there.
If you nuke them till they glow, we can see them in the dark. Easier to shoot them.
Right.
That's horrible.
It is horrible. I'm a pacifist, but I'm saying that would be the only surefire way to cure the problem. I mean,
so aside from genocide, what's our?
I honestly don't think even.
I think we should. You're probably gonna think I've been hanging out MC on the sly, but I think that as much as most people would like to see us get out of the Middle East, I think without American intervention in the world's politics, the 20th century and 21st century would be a whole lot worse off than it is already.
America, fuck yeah.
So we're talking essentially an act of God then in your guys' minds.
Well,
unfortunately.
Oh, sorry, Mole. I apologize.
Well, the problem is
it would take an act of God. Yes, I mean that's saying something.
Islam is a religion and it's fucking everywhere. So nuclearing the Middle East, that might shut it the fuck up for a hot second, but it's not going to go away. Islam isn't going away unless you change their minds.
Yeah, Islam is snuffed out of existence. I mean, I think that would generate a lot of.
I mean, you can't nuke the UK. You can't fucking nuke every other goddamn country with Muslims, like Germany or France.
Hold on. The problem that you got, though, Bill Shot, where I disagree with the way you guys are framing this argument, right, is the issue isn't this Muslim or that Muslim. I'm not saying it's not a component of that 12th century mentality that we're having a problem with, but the problem we're having is with the 12th century mentality. It's not with the quote unquote the religion in and of itself. Now, it's very difficult to see the difference between them at times, but the problem is the mentality of the Arabic culture as it currently exists, and the fact that that culture will not change, and it will export itself as that culture, that cultural identity, not the religion. The cultural identity is what's being exported. Okay, that's where the problem becomes. Yes. So if you can wipe out that culture, you can wipe out that freaking hotbed of that culture and change that mentality of that culture. The only way that we know how, the only way that's worked in the past is to basically go in there and exterminate it, and so that they face extermination. Very few cultures are willing to actually go down the road of total extermination. Normally they stop. Just short of that.
You don't think that would believe the resolve of the people in the UK and Germany and shit.
There will be elements, yes. There will be elements that are wrapped in that culture, yes. But the rest of the ones that aren't wrapped in that cultural mentality that still follow religion will be pointing them out to prevent the same thing from happening to everybody else.
I do want to add that I am not a fan of genocide, and I do not think that's a good idea. But you asked in 2 minutes or less what we should do, and that would
no, dude. I asked an impossible question. That's why I was looking for an impossible answer, and you gave essentially what you thought is the most probable answer, which is MC's stance here. Okay, so let's extrapolate that. Why would we entertain the idea of going to essentially committing fucking genocide, utilizing nuclear weapons? From what I see it from your perspective, MC, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially to force the people in these individual nations, whether it's the government, the people themselves, to literally say, oh, yeah, if we know anything about this stuff going on, we got to cut this shit out and make sure this doesn't perpetuate because it's going to lead to their extermination. That's what I'm kind of hearing.
Yep.
Okay. So what if we could achieve those folks saying this shit is wrong, we need to prevent this from happening without
show me where that has happened in the past.
The only way I could see it is, I think Mole even said it literally would take an act of God. How the hell can we enact an act of God without being gods or prophets or something?
The only way, dude, MC, my solution still stands, doesn't it?
No. And again, it's the Machiavellian thing to do. Again, I'm not a fan of genocide. I don't.
All right, let me approach this from an entirely different manner.
The best solution I can come up with. I'm willing to give it to you if you're willing to hear it.
Oh, I'd love to hear this.
Let's well, I just say I think it would be a very powerful thing if you saw Jews, Catholics, and Muslims praying in Jerusalem.
The fuck?
It's a holy city for all the three Abrahamic religions, right? It's
yeah.
Commonality.
No, wait. I might be fucking high as shit. What did you say about Muslims and Christians and Jews praying in Israel? Don't they already do that?
Yeah, yes, they do.
Are they now?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do it separately, but they do it separately, but they do it.
Well, yeah, because there's
what if they were side by side, having commonality,
actually, in Jerusalem, they do live in pretty close quarters, and they do get along with each other for the most part.
Kind of.
For the most part, I said. Until you get closer to Palestine and the guy.
Don't bring up the Dome of the Rock, though. That pisses me off.
Why?
Because it was the Jewish people's, place of worship, and then the Muslims took over and took it and said fucking Muhammad and the Rock and all this other shit.
So there's anger and hostility in Jerusalem.
No shit.
No. And again, yes, it sounds like I'm asking very simple questions, but I mean this is like the fucking most impossible thing in the world to try to figure out.
You're asking for wishful thinking.
I am. And again, I'm willing to entertain the idea.
I'm willing to hear a serious solution. What you give me is wishful thinking.
Well, yeah, because I don't want to kill millions or billions of people.
Once again, wish in one hand, shit in the other. Which one fills faster?
Oh, that's so hot, MC.
Well, I have had some wishes come true. So, I mean, maybe I'm just still the world's largest 12-year-old, but hey, it is what it is. No, the reason I say that is if they say all politics is local, if that's a commonality, that's a much smaller area than the entire globe. I'm just saying, if we could fix things in there, that would send a fucking powerful message and at least defuse some hatred, along with if folks didn't see like weddings and funerals.
Unfortunately, I just think that people are fucking terrible people. People are just terrible. That shit gets in the people.
People ruin everything.
Gets in the way of everything. Really.
I still got a hope.
That I've heard time and time and time again, which is if. I wish. There's a practical reality that you have got to start to realize. The practical reality is that wishful thinking isn't going to change those minds. It isn't going to sit there and change the dynamics in any way, shape, or form. if you don't want to if you want to sit up there and try it, if you want to go about it the other way and try it, fine. At what point, I'm going to ask you, when it fails time and time and time again, do you realize it's insanity? Because what you've suggested means has been tried, hasn't it? And it has been tried repeatedly, hasn't it? And what's it led to?
Have we tried, or have we just gone in like half mass? We just kind of staggered in like,
you had,
and then we bullshit and we placate and stuff like that, and nobody thinks we're actually serious. And they're like, yeah, they're just trying to sell us something. We ain't.
The Palestinians offered everything, including half of Jerusalem, and they walked away from the peace table.
Well, why'd they do that?
It has been tried because they want Israel gone. There is no solution for them that includes having the state of Israel existing. And you don't want to accept that as their mentality and their reality. No, you want them to have a different opinion. You want to, and what will they do? They will send people out to go on CNN and MSNBC and ABC and everything and talk about how, well, the reason we're upset is X, Y, Z. And yet when you give them what they want, does it fix anything? No.
Right. But, and again, you're conflating many folks that aren't genuine, folks that are just going out there. And there are folks out there that I think actually have general concerns.
Well, great. There's people that have general concerns.
It's a tough place. Arabia's a fucking tough place.
Well, right. And then it's going to take tough freaking under.
Well, I don't. But
it takes toughness to sit up there and deal with it. Toughen up.
Well, yeah. Yeah, you have to show strength. Because otherwise, why the hell are they going to respect you? That's why I said earlier, if you distrust somebody and they're cucking to you, you're not going to accept that at all. If you feel somebody has... No, I'm saying we could do something, show power, show strength, but actually show a little bit of fucking compassion, humility, and fucking tell the goddamn truth.
Compassion will not work with them whatsoever. We have shown them compassion repeatedly.
You don't sound very compassionate.
You wanted to hear me yell. You told me to sit up there when we showed them compassion with frickin' Fallujah.
Where did Matt
we showed them nothing about except compassion with Fallujah, and what was the result?
What the fuck is vagina?
Fallujah.
What the fuck is that?
That was a horrific Marine engagement.
Yes.
Was that in the 80s?
No, that was Iraq.
This was the Iraq War.
Yeah, it wasn't.
We surrounded that place 3 separate times, and then worked out a deal. Okay, we'll be compassionate. Let's back off. And what did it lead to? It led to freaking our people being dragged in the streets. That's what you're dealing with.
Yeah. And that's war. And like a wise man once said, war is fucking hell.
That's barbarism. There's one thing to fight. There's another thing to drag freaking bodies in the street and then have everyone else complain about, oh, the United States. This is what I'm trying to tell you. When you talk about strength to them is the willingness to totally exterminate your enemies. That's what they see as strength. The fact that you're willing to fight them, no, that's not strength. The fact that you're willing to kill a few of them, that isn't strength to them. To them, strength is showing that you're willing to exterminate them to a man.
Because that's their main goal with us, whether they like to admit it or not.
Well, all I got to say to that is, MC, yes, that's absolutely fucking barbarism. That's horrible. And that feeling that you're feeling right now, that rage about the loss of your brothers, that is real. All I'm saying is, I think they feel the same way.
Let's all sing. We all have things. No, they don't think the way we do.
The problem with the Middle East.
I didn't say think. I said feel.
They probably do feel, but the problem with the Middle East, I think, is a lot of it is that they've reverted back. I mean, they're like 800 years behind us. I mean, they don't want to be in the 21st century. They want to live like the goat herders they've always been. They're not. I mean, I hate to say this, and it's going to sound horrible, but they're not as civilized as we are, and it's because of their religion, and their religion deems them to not be civilized. You know,
it's funny. We used to say that about the Japanese, like when World War II happened.
And you know
We
what?
dehumanized the Japanese. We really did.
They had every right to be dehumanized. They treated us like fucking animals.
We put our own people in fucking prisons or concentration, whatever the fuck.
Yeah, did we sit up there and then poison them and then give them various types of freaking diseases and then cut them open while they were still alive to see what the effects were on their organs?
Are you talking about what we did to the Native Americans? I'm confused.
No, we didn't do that with the Native Americans.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, I'm positive about that.
I'm not.
We didn't do the Native Americans any favors, but we did not treat them like the Japanese treated American soldiers. No.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, I'm not saying we did them any favors by any means, but that's conflation. We can't compare the two. It's totally different things.
No, and but I was making the point that
that was a different time. Also, you got to remember. I mean, I'm not excusing what they did. I'm just saying.
When are we going to get good? When are we going to get good, Scrub? That's what I want to know.
Define. We need to be better wizards.
Define good in 100 years.
Once we eradicate religion and all learn to live and realize this is the only earth we got and we're the only people there are and we got to learn to love each other.
Eradicate religion like you want and the world is not going to get better. It's going to get worse.
I tend to agree with Mole because Mole sounds like he's memeing Carpenter from 2,000 years ago.
No, well, he thinks that this is going to be the solution, and I don't think that's
a solution right away. I don't think it'd be a solution right away. I think it'd be chaos to begin with. But eventually,
I don't think that eventually it's going to work that way. That's just all right. Let me explain this in a different